Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are today's top stories.
Former President Trump set to speak today following his guilty verdict. What his strongest argument for appeal is, and what will the judge determine for sentencing? We'll have legal analysis.
The Trump guilty verdict unleashes a flood of donations to his campaign, and what U.S. lawmakers are saying about the outcome of the case.
People around the country react to former President Trump's New York conviction, how this could affect the way they vote in November.
The U.S. and NATO are being threatened by Moscow over a history-making policy change. Find out what's changed and how Russia is responding.
NATO foreign ministers meet in the Czech Republic to prepare for this summer's Leaders Summit. The implications for the Russia-Ukraine war.
And Mexico is suing U.S. gun manufacturers over their role in cross-border gun trafficking. But a former leader at the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives says they're going after the wrong people.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Reactions are pouring in after former President Donald Trump's historic verdict. He has been found guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records.
That makes him the first American president to be convicted of a felony. The jury of 12 reached the verdict yesterday afternoon after 2 days of deliberation.
Trump, who spoke shortly after the verdict, denies any wrongdoing. He's expected to appeal.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA, and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end, and we'll win.
The verdict plunges the U.S. into unexplored territory ahead of the presidential election on November 5th.
Trump faces 4 years in prison for each count, with a maximum of 20 years, though others convicted of that crime often receive shorter sentences, fines, or probation.
Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg praised the jury for their work on the case.
I did my job, but we now have a federal court decision ruling on the legal theories. We had a state court decision on the omnibus motions. But most importantly, today we have the most important voice of all, and that's the voice of the jurors. They have spoken. And while this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors, by following the facts and the law and doing so without fear or favor.
Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, after the verdict, said the jury has spoken. You just heard his praise just now. He would not comment on sentencing and whether prosecutors were seeking jail time for Trump.
Trump's defense team says it will fight the conviction by filing motions and vowed to appeal. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on Bragg and what's next for former President Trump.
Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg praised jurors and prosecutors after former President Trump's conviction on Thursday.
Their service is literally the cornerstone of our judicial system.
The Manhattan DA, thanking jurors, said they performed a fundamental civic duty. Bragg says jurors vowed to make a decision based on evidence in the law after hearing testimony from 22 witnesses. Trump's lawyer Todd Blanche told CNN they will appeal the conviction after sentencing.
We were indicted for conduct that happened in 2015, 16, 17, in a jurisdiction that it was very hard for us to get a fair trial.
Blanche says it was telling that half the potential jury pool walked out for being unable to be impartial. He said everyone on the jury knew Trump as president, candidate, or from The Apprentice.
Argument. I think the timing of this trial and was really unfair to President Trump. There was so much publicity around the witnesses and around leading up to the trial that it just, our system of justice isn't supposed to be a system where every person that walks in the courtroom knows about the case.
Judge Juan Merchan set sentencing for July 11th, a few days before the Republican National Convention, where Trump is set to become the 2024 GOP nominee. John Malcolm from the Heritage Foundation told NTD the chances of Trump going to prison are very slim.
Very slim. First of all, he is entitled to Secret Service protection as a former president and as a putative nominee for the Republican Party. The Secret Service would never allow him to sit in a prison cell where he could be exposed to danger.
Former federal prosecutor Kash Patel, a current senior advisor for Trump, told NTD the two-tier system of justice has exploded, calling it a tragic day for America.
What happened to all the constitutional due process jurists and lawyers out there that said due process and the rule of law in America applies equally to all? What happened to all those in the media that were cheering on the unlawful prosecution of Donald Trump, the unconstitutional verdict that was read into court today? My question to them is, what song will you be singing next week when Hunter Biden, the current president's son, goes on trial for federal tax and gun charges?
Trump faces 3 other felony indictments, but the New York case may be the only one to conclude before the November election. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
And Trump is set to return to the campaign trail soon today with a news conference at Trump Tower in Manhattan.
His campaign said the former president will deliver remarks. We will bring you that live, so stay tuned.
Joining us live now to discuss all of this is Hans Manke, attorney and host of Truth Over News on Epoch TV. Welcome, Hans. As an attorney, how do you see? Good morning. Yeah, as an attorney, how do you see the convictions in these in terms of the application of the law?
Well, the law was not applied. I think from the start, there was only really one question in this case, whether one of those 12 jurors did not hate Trump enough to convict. And we got the answer. They all hated him enough to convict. Based on the evidence, based on the law, it's just simply impossible to convict.
Okay, so break that down for us. What exactly was not lawful in your view?
Right, and this takes us to the grounds of appeal, because of course those are the same thing. So it starts off by the fact that this was a selective prosecution, because no one else would have been prosecuted, and that's obvious to anyone. Then, more importantly, I think we have the unidentified crime. We've talked about this a lot, that the judge allowed the jurors to sort of pick and choose, and some might have chosen one, another, and whatever. Again, that's those are due process issues. Those are massive grounds of appeal. We have a lack of jurisdiction because there's a federal element here in terms of the federal election laws. The judge made a lot of mistakes. Calling them mistakes, I'm not sure whether that's the right word, but we all remember he didn't allow Brad Smith to testify, or he just limited it so much. Brad Smith is the former chairman of the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, who would have explained these things to the jury. We know that the judge ruled in favor of the prosecution the whole time. Of course, the judge donated to Biden. I mean, that in and of itself is a massive due process issue. So on and on. The prosecutor himself, due process issue. I mean, he was conflicted because he ran on a platform of doing exactly this. So that at that point, it becomes political and not judicial. So, I mean, the grounds of appeal are very, very, very long. But the grounds of appeal match what I meant earlier, what I said earlier, specifically that a jury should have recognized that this just isn't right. And we haven't even talked about Michael Cohen yet, who was caught in various lies on the witness stand. So anyway, I think there's plenty of grounds of appeal.
Right. And which of these would be the strongest and which would be the weakest in your view?
Well, the strongest tend to be the ones that happen at the trial. So things that went wrong at the trial. So for instance, back to Michael Cohen here, the judge allowed things, extraneous matters from Michael Cohen to do with his previous plea and, with previous cases to be brought before the jury. And of course, that's wrong because the jury ought only to be given evidence in the matter before it. So I'd say that's a very strong one. I think excluding the testimony from Brad Smith, whom I already mentioned, that's a big one. the jury instructions, I guess, we talked about that in previous days. The fact that the judge allowed the jury to sort of pick and choose the crime, and they didn't have to unanimously agree on which crime. He said, well, as long as you all pick one, it's fine. So I think of those are maybe the top 3 or 4 of the things that happened at trial. And I think eventually this will be overturned. I have no doubt this will be overturned. It may not be overturned in the Court of Appeals because, again, look at who sits on there. It's still New York and so on. But, eventually if it goes to over to the federal system for, again, for instance, breaches of Fifth Amendment, due process rights and so on, it will be overturned there.
So some commentators have suggested that Manchin and Trump's contentious relationship could impact the sentencing. Based on what we've seen in this trial and your experience more generally, is this even a possibility?
Yes, I think the assumption that Trump will not be jailed, I think is a very dangerous assumption. Given that everything that Manchin has done, starting from the fact that he didn't recuse despite being a Biden donor, which should have been automatic recusal, and then all the things that happened over the past few weeks, where he always went in favor of the prosecution, always ruled against Trump. Did he come this far to then not jail Trump? I would be very skeptical of that. I think it's fairly likely that he will jail Trump. The question then becomes whether he will allow Trump to go on bail while the appeal is pending. And again, he may not. So I would not make any kind of positive assumptions about that.
Right. And how could that impact President Trump in terms of, obviously the election coming up?
Well, technically, he could. Of course, being convicted or being in jail doesn't stop him from running for president. So he could. If he was jailed, I think if Manchin really pushes this through, it would probably be for a short period of time, because then there would be appeals, and at some other court, maybe on the federal level, maybe on the appeal level, there will be a habeas corpus. They'll set him free. So it will be kind of restricted. But theoretically, Trump could run as a candidate from jail. He could even be president from jail. Totally uncharted territory here.
Yeah, so you're predicting that on appeal, this will be resolved and Trump will, that the defense will prevail and Trump will not need to go to jail or have any fines applied. Is that what you're saying?
Ultimately, yes. Mm-hmm. But in the short and medium run, anything's possible. Ultimately, this will be overturned. But in the meantime, what happened yesterday is, we probably, few of us would have thought that was possible a few years ago, and yet here we are. So who knows what else might happen in the next few months.
Yeah, and just looking ahead a few steps, speaking of Manchin and the election, sentencing is set for July 11th, which is right near the RNC's convention in which they expect to nominate Trump. What do you make of the timing there?
Well, I don't think I'd read too much into that. The sort of the delay between the verdict and the sentencing is, kind of normal, 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever it is. I think the question is whether the RNC wants to do something about that. So do they want to maybe push forward the convention in order to have Trump as the nominee before this happens? At this point, it's kind of a political calculation there.
All right. Thank you so much, Hans Munke. Great to speak with you. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right. And that was Hans Munke, attorney, PhD, and host of Truth Over News on Epic TV. Trump's verdict reportedly has triggered a donation frenzy, crashing the campaign site. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that and the reactions of lawmakers and others to the verdict.
Minutes after the guilty verdict, an influx of donations to Trump's presidential campaign caused his donation page to temporarily become unavailable. The page displayed a 500 error stating something went wrong. The Trump campaign later confirmed that the page was down due to a flood of donations. The page has since gone back up. Some large donations came from Silicon Valley tech investor Sean McGuire, who donated $300,000 to Trump's campaign, and former Congressman Lee Zeldin, who said he secured an $800,000 donation for Trump's joint fundraising committee. Casino billionaire Miriam Adelson and hotel chain owner Robert Bigelow also promised donations. Senator J.D. Vance took to X to say that the best way to fight back right now is to donate to the Trump campaign. Vance shared a link to a new Never Surrender donation page that features a message from the former president. "I'm a political prisoner," reads the message, which features President Trump's signature and a photo of his mugshot. "I was just convicted in a rigged political witch hunt trial." Senator Vance also reacted to the guilty verdict on X, writing, "Dems invented a felony to get Trump with the help of a Soros-funded prosecutor and a Biden donor judge who rigged the entire case to get this outcome." Other lawmakers reacted on X as well. House Speaker Mike Johnson wrote, "Today is a shameful day in American history. Democrats cheered as they convicted the leader of the opposing party on ridiculous charges predicated on the testimony of a disbarred, convicted felon. Senator Ted Cruz called the verdict a dark day for America, saying the entire trial has been a sham and nothing more than a political persecution." Representative Jim Jordan wrote, "The Manhattan Kangaroo Court shows what happens when our justice system is weaponized by partisan prosecutors in front of a biased judge with an unfair process designed to keep President Trump off the campaign trail." South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem wrote, "Massively conflicted Biden donor and liberal judge, plus stacked jury with unconstitutional jury instructions, plus radical leftist prosecutor equals wrongful conviction." Independent journalist Tucker Carlson wrote that Trump will win the election if he's not killed first, but said the verdict marks the end of the fairest justice system in the world. Congresswoman Maxine Waters rejoiced on X, writing, "Hallelujah! My predictions came true. I predicted 3 years ago that Stormy Daniels would be the one to get Trump. My faith in the criminal justice system has been strengthened." President Biden wrote, "There's only one way to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office, at the ballot box." And Senator Chris Murphy wrote, "It's simple. He broke the law, he got caught, he got convicted. Is this crime as serious as the others he committed? No. But the rule of law applies to everyone. Trump will almost certainly appeal the verdict. It is unlikely any such appeal would be resolved before the November 5th election." Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Mixed reactions across the country to the verdict. Here's what America has to say.
You know what Trump is doing?
Crowds gathered outside the Manhattan courthouse Thursday as a 12-member jury found former President Trump guilty on all 34 counts.
It's disgusting, I'm telling you, man. I was just like, how could they do that? But the more money, the more power. You know how it is over here in America, man.
I'm so pleased that there's finally some accountability for Donald Trump.
I feel good. It's a great day for the American people.
I feel very sad for America because this is the man who's fighting for America.
NTD spoke to several New Yorkers to find out what they had to say about the upcoming election.
I think they're still going to give it to him, but I don't know what voters around the country think about that. It's not just about the presidential elections, right? I mean, they're going to have to keep coming back to us for our votes. So it can't be kind of justifying bad behavior just because it's expedient and then come back year after year, asking for votes. So it's not going to work out.
Biden just wiped out the whole Republican race.
Outside New York, Americans reacted to the verdict and reflected on what it could mean going forward. Trump supporters gathered near his Mar-a-Lago home on Thursday.
Our first reaction was sadness for America, sadness for Trump. But at the end of the day, it's only going to increase his support like every other time they indicted him.
It's very scary, very scary. We're in a third world country right now. I don't even feel like we live in the United States. If it can happen to him, it can happen to any of us.
I was so disappointed. It was like the whole world came to an end. Okay? But we have confidence in our higher courts. When it gets into the Supreme Court, he's going to be released.
Some voters said the outcome of the trial will not change the way they plan to vote.
I don't like him as a person, but I think he's very smart how to run stuff and how to other countries fear him because they know he won't take anything. So that's what I like.
I have real reservations on voting for a convicted felon, but I don't believe he's a convicted felon. I believe it'll be overturned.
I was not surprised about the verdict. I knew they were going to do it because they don't want him as president. This was planned, carefully planned, and so here we are. Of course I will vote for him, even though he was convicted, because it's unfair.
Trump faces a maximum sentence of 4 years in prison, though others convicted of that crime often received shorter sentences, fines, or probation. Incarceration would not prevent him from campaigning or taking office if he were to win.
Whether I particularly like Trump or not, for me, is not really the issue. It's more of a question of justice. And I feel like he's like the crookedest president this country has ever seen.
I'm a huge Trump supporter, so I think he's done good with the country, and he's helped the Muslim community out a lot, in my opinion. And I'm hoping to see him for another 4 years.
He will not be jailed ahead of sentencing. The date for Trump's sentencing is set for July 11th, 4 days before the Republican National Convention. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Coming up, the FAA is investigating a second near collision at Ronald Reagan Airport in Washington. Can the airport handle the current volume of flights?
And will people soon be exchanging human relationships for artificial intelligence or replacing their higher powers with religious avatars? Analysis of rapid developments in AI with coffee and COVID blogger attorney Jeff Childers after the break.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, I have an important message about security. Write down the number on your screen so you can call when I finish. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. This is a lock for your life insurance, a rate lock that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. But be careful. Many policies you see do not have one. But you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. Call this number to learn more. This plan was designed with a rate lock for people on a fixed income who want life insurance that fits their budget and is simple to get. Coverage options start at $9.95 a month, less than 35 cents a day. Act now, and your rate will be locked in for life. It will never increase, guaranteed. This is lifelong coverage that can never be canceled as long as you pay your premiums, guaranteed. And your acceptance is guaranteed, with no health questions. You cannot be turned down because of your health. Call for your information kit and read about this rate lock for yourself. You'll also get a free beneficiary planner. Both are free with no obligation. Don't miss out. Call for information, then decide. Read about the 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. Don't wait. Call this number now.
Call now and you'll also get this free beneficiary planner. Use this valuable guide to record important information and your final wishes, and it's yours free just for calling. So don't wait. Call 1-800-357-4821 for your free information. That's 1-800-357-4821. There's no risk or obligation. That number again is 1-800-357-4821. That's 1-800-357-4821. 1-800-357-4821. Call now.
These are all farmers. Maybe
no,
not this
not
one.
A farm anymore.
But here is a farm, right?
No, there's also not a farm anymore.
All these people shut down because of the government policies?
Yeah.
The government wants to control the food. So we don't eat meat, but we eat insects.
As the price of staples goes through the roof, people will say, I can't afford a steak anymore. So, all right, I'll eat your stupid crickets.
Hi, I'm Tim Che, the director and writer of The Firing Squad. You can participate in our Million Souls campaign, inviting everyone you know to Jesus. Listen, we all face some kind of firing squad in our lives, and yet faith in the Lord, that challenge can lead us to true peace in this insane world. We can't do it without you. We're competing with big Hollywood movies, so we're relying on your voice to spread the word. Thank you again for supporting this important movie.
Join us on NTD Good Morning because we want you to stay informed.
Kickstart your morning with the latest you missed overnight.
Right, and don't forget that inspiration.
Absolutely, so let's shine some light on the good news too.
Tune in every weekday morning to NTD News.
Welcome back. The FAA is investigating a near collision at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. It's the second close call in 6 weeks.
The FAA said the air traffic controller was forced to cancel the takeoff clearance Wednesday for a Boston-bound American Airlines flight. The agency says that's because another aircraft was cleared to land on an intersecting runway.
In recordings of the incident, the tower can be heard desperately calling for American Airlines Flight 2134 to turn off the main runway. The airline said it would support the FAA in its investigation.
In April, the FAA started investigating a similar incident when one aircraft had been directed to cross the runway just as another flight was about to take off.
Earlier this month, the FAA Reauthorization Act was passed, allowing more flights into and out of the airport. Several senators criticized the act, saying the airport is already at capacity. And is Mexico's lawsuit against U.S. gun manufacturers misdirected? The country blames these companies for cross-border gun trafficking, which worsens violent crime there. But a retired deputy assistant director from the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or ATF, says Mexico should be suing the ATF and federal prosecutors. His name is Peter Forcelli. I spoke with him for answers. Peter Forcelli, thank you so much for joining us. Explain why you say the ATF and federal prosecutors are at fault here.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, back in 2009, I was a special agent, group supervisor actually, in Phoenix when Operation Fast and Furious kicked off. This was towards the end of the year. And that was a program in which ATF encouraged dealers to continue to sell firearms to straw purchasers, knowing full well that those firearms were being trafficked into Mexico. So there was a point during that program where some of the dealers actually protested when they were aware that some of their guns were being traced from Mexico, and they indicated they didn't want to sell guns anymore. So they, the dealers, and some of their attorneys met with ATF agents and supervisors and members of the United States Attorney's Office in Phoenix, and they were encouraged by federal agents and prosecutors to keep selling firearms just to make this Operation Fast and Furious case, which was actually called the Jacob Chambers case, a success. And to me, it's a bit mind-blowing because in the years before Operation Fast and Furious, we were interdicting guns as they were heading across the border like it was going out of style, to the tune of thousands of guns over the course of many years. And that same United States Attorney's Office had a hard and fast policy that once the guns made their way into Mexico in straw purchases, which weren't always obvious, that they wouldn't take a case. So how they pivoted and instantly decided that it was okay to let guns go to Mexico was a big mystery. But obviously doing so thumbed its nose at public safety on both sides of the border.
So what was the original purpose of this Fast and Furious project?
Well, my understanding, and I was not part of that investigation, I was in a group that was nearby. Our group was working on home invasion cases, but they were looking to take down a cartel-affiliated firearms trafficking network. But when you look at the assets that ATF had in Mexico, which was very small compared to what DEA had, and you look at the firearms trafficking laws that existed back then, which was lying and buying and being engaged in a business without a license, they were relatively toothless. So the thought that you would be able to prosecute people in Mexico for the activities that were occurring in the United States was somewhat delusional, and I testified about as much when I testified in front of Congress back in 2011.
So in effect, this Fast and Furious investigation basically just put guns into the hands of cartels.
Yeah, it went against the grain of everything we believed in. We spent years seizing guns based on tips that we got from members of the gun industry. I would say 90% of the cases that we generated came from licensed gun dealers who saw them, they saw something suspicious happening within their store when someone was trying to acquire a gun. They would call us. We would stop cars, ask questions, seize firearms like cops do all over the country. It was nothing scandalous. And many of those cases went unprosecuted because the U.S. Attorney's Office was just not interested in prosecuting gun cases. And in the few instances where straw purchasers were successful and the guns were recovered in Mexico, they had, and them being the U.S. Attorney's Office, a hard and fast rule that once the gun made it into Mexico, the body of the crime was in Mexico and they couldn't prosecute it. So then all of a sudden, when this Fast and Furious program starts, they pivot without telling anybody, I guess, other than the people in that group, and knowingly allowed the guns to go to Mexico, which is appalling on so many different levels.
All right, Peter Forcelli, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
In D.C., a man has admitted to harassing members of Congress last year. Ade Salim Lilly admitted to making more than 12,000 disturbing and violent phone calls.
35-year-old Lilly pleaded guilty to 2 charges yesterday. The harassing calls started in February in 2023. U.S. Capitol Police reportedly told Lilly on multiple occasions his phone calls were illegal. In one phone call, he even threatened to kill a congressional staff member.
The New York native was arrested in Puerto Rico in November.
And OpenAI recently released an update to its artificial intelligence mode. The promotional videos caused waves due to the new abilities and fears about massive job losses. NTD's Daniel Monahan spoke with an attorney and author of the blog Coffee and COVID, Jeff Childers, for analysis.
I want to introduce you to somebody.
Well, hello there, cutie.
ChatGPT 4o can mimic human speaking style, detect people's moods, and process what it's seeing and describe it to you in real time.
So, I'm pretty sure this is the angle alpha right here, right?
Perfect. Correct.
One demonstration showed it acting as a teacher, another as an interpreter translating English and Italian, and yet another showed it confidently handling a customer service call with another AI, as well as assisting with a complex software coding problem on a computer screen. Some AI developers described the new technology as terrifying. Attorney Jeff Childers says it's going to change the landscape of countless numbers of professions.
The frantic speed with which this AI train is trundling down the tracks is remarkable. I can't remember in my lifetime any new, disruptive technology like this rolling out this quickly, leaving people completely unprepared, mentally, socially, economically. There's just no time to get ready.
Childers discussed one profession that could be affected.
Teachers, great example. I mean, if an AI can do a better job than 80 or 90% of teachers out there, why wouldn't people use the AI? And you get one-on-one teacher-student interactions. That's a hard sell.
One of Childers' biggest concerns is people starting to have relationships with machines instead of humans.
The machine doesn't care, but people will be persuaded that the machine cares, and maybe it's easier for me to spend time with the machine than a human being. Human beings argue with you, and they're self-interested, and they get their feelings hurt, and they're demanding for time. And
Childers also worries about the dependency people could develop on AI as they begin to trust it more and more and look to it to solve their problems. Could they choose Jesus or Buddha as their AI avatar, replace their higher power with a man-made creation?
And then you begin to perceive the AI as being something greater than human. It's smarter, faster, it knows more, it knows everything. Then you develop, wouldn't you, an almost religious relationship with the machine. It's not just another human. It's something more than human. And when that happens, what influence will the AI wield on us, and then who will be programming the AI?
Another concern for the Coffee and COVID blogger is that the AI developers admit that they don't fully understand how the technology works. It reminds him of a classic science fiction trope.
The scientists are looking at the alien cell and like, doctor, what is the cell doing now? And the other scientist says, well, we're not sure, but this is too important of a discovery to keep in the lab.
GPT-4o, short for Omni, will power OpenAI's popular ChatGPT chatbot and will be available to users in the coming weeks.
This is Bowser.
Well, hello, Bowser. Aren't you just the most adorable little thing?
Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
One of his favorite things.
Up ahead, now that the final verdict has been reached, is it really that final? How is former President Trump responding to his guilty verdict, and what message is he sending to supporters?
Australian politicians say their relationship with the U.S. will remain strong after yesterday's historic verdict. What else they say about the current situation when we return with NTD News.
The highest art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shen Yun.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang green vegetable omega-3, greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puritang.com to learn more.
There is a road laid out for me.
Boxes everywhere, and this is gonna be Addie's room.
I am blind,
Would you really like it? I hope so. Yeah.
I know this road is there for me. There is a long way.
First night here, but Amy seems cool.
The waist down by the river. I am blind, but I need not see.
I got this.
I know it's
okay.
If I'm really free, take me down to the river and wash me.
Hi, I'm Kelly Wright. We thank you for joining us and watching America's Hope here on NTD News. Bottom line is, I know you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, but let's give you some good news in the midst of the bad news. Watch us nightly, right here on NTD News, for a full dose of America's Hope.
Welcome back. For a look at the impact of Donald Trump's guilty verdict, we're joined by Mike Leon, host of Can We Please Talk and Policy and Strategy Director of the Free and Equal Elections Foundation. Good to see you, Mike. How is the outcome of this trial likely to impact the presidential election in November?
Hey, Chris, good to see you first and foremost. What a historic day, right? We went through yesterday. Thought the jury deliberations would at least take us through the weekend and into next week. But here we are, and now we have a former president of the United States that's been charged and found guilty by a jury of his peers. You know, I think the most interesting thing for me has been seeing some recent polls that have come out before the verdict was announced. There was a recent PBS Marist NewsHour poll that came out showing independent voters over 65 to 70% wouldn't be swayed by a decision like this. And that's really the big voter block that we're looking at come November, if you start to look at how many more people are registering as independent voters, obviously we know where staunch Democrats and staunch Republicans lean on this issue, whether or not they feel the charges were politically motivated, the statute of limitations in this case. So you're not probably going to sway voters like that. But the fact that a recent poll right around before we got this decision is showing that more independent voters wouldn't be swayed by a decision like this. And I think it's because, the case wasn't on TV. It wasn't available to air broadcast wise. So you couldn't get the sentiments of the former president in court. And then also the charges. Everyone, legal analysts everywhere, had said that this was probably the weakest of the 4 cases that he's facing in 2024.
Now, Mike, this election is probably going to come down to the key battleground states, just like we saw last election and most elections. Do we know anything about how voters in these states view this?
Yeah, that's a good question, Chris, because obviously for people that don't know, obviously the last election was decided by, such a slim margin, right? Georgia, 11,000 plus votes. In Arizona, we know that the margin was almost razor thin. And then obviously you get Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina this year is being considered a swing state. So it'll be interesting to see how these play out. Now, what we have seen is that the trends are starting to show that there is a little bit more voter support, specifically in the Latino community, of which I'm a member of, for the former president. And then obviously we've seen recent campaign rallies that former President Trump has done in my neck of the woods in the South Bronx, trying to appeal to more African-American voters. Obviously his number has increased a little bit in terms of African-American support. It's still light years ahead of, I'm sure, what he would want or what President Biden would want to give up margin-wise. But we really don't know yet, Chris, because the former president really hasn't done campaign stops outside of New York, New Jersey. He was at the Libertarian Convention in D.C. So he hasn't really done too much. I was speaking with an Arizona reporter recently on the ground that former President Trump hasn't made a campaign stop there this year. And this is a critical state, right? There's a critical Senate seat that's up for grabs there with Ruben Gallego and Kari Lake. So it'll be interesting to see, because that's a large makeup of independents that are in that state. And that's the state that everyone points to that won Joe Biden the election in 2020 and got him over the 270 threshold. So we don't know yet what we think of voters there or what they think of this decision, but we do know that so far from recent national polling, it hasn't really swayed too much because of, like I said, this trial not being televised. And these charges, a lot of people felt this wasn't the most serious of the cases if the former president was going to go to jail.
Okay, now let's look at this situation. Trump's sentencing date is July 11th. He's going to likely expected to appeal that on all kinds of different grounds. But if he was theoretically sentenced to jail or even put into jail before November, how would that impact voters' decisions?
Chris, I mean, the million-dollar question, right? I mean, so let's look at, first off, I'm so glad you mentioned the calendar, because everybody's kind of glossing over June 27th. We have a major debate between former President Trump and current President Biden, national stage, just them two, no crowd, talking about this is going to get brought up, and obviously the issues that President Biden is facing from a foreign policy perspective. You mentioned July 11th. The RNC convention is the week after. So there's a huge, uptick there that if that doesn't happen on July 11th, does this get kind of extended out? He's going to try to exhaust all legal options in terms of appeals going into that. You've got the DNC convention will be in August. And then obviously another debate with President Biden in September. So there's a big calendar coming up here. And now I think the biggest thing for me, and we mentioned this on our show recently, was Americans wanted to know, of these 4 cases, were we going to get a trial and were we going to get a verdict? We now finally have that. You finally have that you can take with you to the ballot box, whether or not you think you can vote for somebody that's been found guilty of a crime, or whether or not you can vote for this incumbent president who you feel maybe your policies are not matching up for you. And now you're going to be able to see them face off against each other in a debate format. Will seeing a former president actually get sentenced to jail time, making his way to the courthouse, being put in, the robes that they wear in the courts, will that influence people? Again, Chris, the polling is showing that it hasn't swayed the group that everyone is trying to appease to, and that's the independent voters. That's the large makeup of people. They're not swayed by it yet, but to your point, It's because they haven't seen him yet go through these processes because we're kind of shut out from seeing that on television. So it'll be interesting to watch. But man, we're here. Everybody's been talking about this. And now these next 4 to 6 weeks are going to be pivotal in American history going forward as we get to the November election.
Incredible. Yeah, you're talking about how Americans view this. You'd expect more people to push away from Trump. This candidate is now a convicted felon, but they're not. What does that say about this case? The way about the way Americans view this case?
Yeah, look, I've been very vocal about this, right? It doesn't matter how you feel about the former president, right? It's about the specifics of this case. I'm not a lawyer. I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express one time, Chris. But I know from lawyers that have come on my show, including a former Trump attorney and including a former DOJ prosecutor who happens to know Alvin Bragg and worked with him for years, they've all said to me, and the DOJ prosecutor specifically, hey, I probably wouldn't have brought this case. Speaking of which, the DOJ, the Southern District of New York, did not pursue these charges against the former president. So you could not like Donald Trump, but you could also be fair to Trump in understanding the logistics and surrounding this specific case. I'm not talking about the other ones with respect to classified documents and the peaceful transfer of power on January 6th. To this specific case, this one was the weakest one. This one was the one that legal analysts everywhere said it's going to be a novel legal theory. I wouldn't break up 34 charges of falsifying business records. This is the highest it's ever been done in New York court history. So we're going to be, you can be fair to the former president and say this was an interesting case, but now we have a verdict, Chris.
All right, Mike Leon, Policy and Strategy Director for the Free and Equal Elections Foundation and host of Can We Please Talk? Thank you so much.
Thanks as always, Chris.
Former President Trump is pledging to defeat globalists, communists, Marxists, and fascists in a new campaign video. It was released after his guilty verdict yesterday.
The video is an apparent appeal to supporters while motivating them to remain loyal and engaged following the verdict. It includes a call to, quote, join President Trump's fight for America.
Trump condemned the verdict and asserted his innocence outside the courthouse. He said the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. He pledged to fight to end and win.
President Trump criticized Justice Merchan throughout the trial. After the verdict, he called Merchan conflicted and biased.
Trump also said on social media that the case is long from over, hinting there at appeals, of course. Tourists from across the country are reacting to Trump's verdict.
Here's what people visiting the White House have to say.
I kind of worry that it'll further divide our country. It sounds like the jury really paid attention, and I think we need to honor the verdict.
It'll be overturned. It won't stand up in court on appeal.
One tourist from New York says she thinks the verdict means Trump won't be able to continue his campaign.
And then we're stuck with Biden and Kamala Harris that doesn't do anything for us and has not been doing anything for us since he became president.
One man says he didn't actually know what the case was all about, but he responded this once he learned more.
Falsifying documents. That seems like a very politician thing to do. It seems like that's probably par for the course.
That's great. You know, if you do something wrong, then you should be able to follow through with it. But what happens after that, he probably still try to get away with something. So.
And lastly, one bystander voiced his support for Trump by rapping.
You know you're going back in office. Come on. Trump, come on, boy. You know you're going back in 1600 Penn Avenue. You know that.
And even celebrities are taking to X to cheer and jeer the news of former president's conviction. Author Stephen King wrote the Republican candidate for president is a convicted felon. Actress Bette Midler posted guilty on all charges.
Actress Barbra Streisand posted convicted felon Donald Trump is blaming the judge, the jury, and New York. Americans must not allow this felon anywhere near the White House again.
Actor James Wood wrote, the Democrats overplayed their hand on this one. Had the jury been given clear instructions and returned a guilty verdict on a few counts, it would have been more authentic.
Actor Dean Cain wrote, what a joke our judicial system has become under this administration. History will judge this era harshly, while actor Kevin Sorbo wrote, still voting for Trump.
And Australian politicians are also weighing in. They say their relationship with the U.S. will remain strong regardless of who is elected president this year. Here's Australia's foreign minister commenting on the issue.
The United States of America is our most important strategic partner. We have a relationship that goes back decades. We have an alliance which is enduring. We have a friendship and we have a very strong relationship across people and institutions, and that will continue.
Australia's Prime Minister said the alliance between the two countries is a relationship between nations, not just between individuals. Neither the Prime Minister nor the Foreign Minister commented directly on the case. They say they won't comment on legal proceedings happening in other countries.
Australia's opposition leader said some Americans love Trump while others hate the former president. According to him, this case will further reinforce the views on both sides.
And stay with us. Up ahead, Italy won't allow any weapons sent to Ukraine to attack targets in Russia. Why the country isn't following the U.S. and NATO's new policy. We'll return with that and more after this break.
People often ask, where's the best place in Korea to do business?
Chungbuk Free Economic Zone, of course. Take the first step to a successful investment and enjoy a bright future with CP Petchu.
Hey everyone, it's me Sebastian and it is a beautiful day today. We have so much to be grateful for, so just remember, if you see someone without a smile, give them one of yours. I just love inspiring people to be the best they can be, and the reason I'm able to inspire so many people is because people like you who inspire me with your support of Shriners Hospitals for Children. Since I was little, I've broken 100 bones and I've had 19 surgeries. Shriners Hospitals for Children was with me every step of the way. But more than that, they've given me the confidence to know I can do whatever I set my mind to. Like right now, I've set my mind to sharing my smile with you. Did you get it?
Because of people like you, I can play the violin.
I can play piano.
I can understand.
The help I get is only possible because of caring people like you who pick up the phone and call the number on your screen to make your monthly gift.
And when you call or go online right now to donate $19 a month or more, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a thank you and a reminder of all the smiles you're bringing to kids' faces every day.
Kids like me.
And me.
And me.
And me. So what are you waiting for? You can inspire kids like me by visiting loveshriners.org. After all, you can't help everyone, but you can help someone. So let's go!
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving. Join me and bring a smile to the world with your monthly gift today.
Please call now. If operators are busy, please call again or go to loveshriners.org right away.
Join me and bring a smile to the world.
Hi, I'm Tim Che, the director and writer of The Firing Squad. You can participate in our Million Souls campaign, inviting everyone you know to Jesus. Listen, we all face some kind of firing squad in our lives, and yet faith in the Lord, that challenge can lead us to true peace in this insane world. We can't do it without you. We're competing with big Hollywood movies, so we're relying on your voice to spread the word. Thank you again for supporting this important movie.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. Prediabetes does. With early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test today. Go to doihaveprediabetes.org.
Welcome back. Now we have more details about the restrictions on how Kyiv can use Western-supplied weaponry and other headlines from Europe. The Kremlin says that former President Trump's conviction shows that all legal and illegal means are being used to eliminate political rivals. Trump is the first U.S. president to be convicted of a crime.
The conviction of the former president comes amid a volatile battlefield situation in Ukraine.
The Kremlin says that it's already aware of attempts by Ukraine to strike targets inside Russian territory with U.S.-supplied weapons. NATO foreign ministers met in the Czech Republic today to prepare for this summer's Leaders Summit. A major topic is removing the restrictions on how Kyiv can use Western-supplied weaponry to combat Russia.
President Biden has given Ukraine the go-ahead to use American weapons to strike inside Russia for the limited purpose of defending Kharkiv. Calls for more Ukrainian leeway have grown louder in recent weeks after Russia launched artillery strikes on Kharkiv from its territory.
Now, numerous ministers, including those from the Netherlands, Finland, Poland, and Germany, are expressing similar approval.
They say Ukraine has the right to defend itself from attacks originating on Russian soil.
Italy's foreign minister says his government will not allow any weapons sent to Ukraine to attack targets in Russia. He argues that Italy is constitutionally prohibited from doing so.
The foreign minister said his country wants, quote, a just peace in the conflict. He added that Italy will continue to support Ukraine to defend its own territory at the NATO foreign ministers meeting in Prague.
Spain has fined budget airlines Ryanair, EasyJet, Vueling, and privately owned Volocopter more than $160 million. The country's consumer rights ministry penalized the carriers for charging for cabin luggage and other business practices.
The ministry also said fined the airlines for making passengers pay to sit with their children. Some of the carriers have indicated that they will challenge the government's decision.
Airlines in the United States have come under similar pressure over what the Biden administration calls junk fees.
A new rule announced in April aims to protect consumers against such fees.
That's it for this hour. For round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app.
Stay with us and we'll bring you more news in the next 2 hours.
Hi, folks. Do you trust this economy? What if you could receive a strong fixed rate of return that's not correlated to the stock market or the Fed? And what if you were in control? You could turn your income on or off, compound it, whatever you choose. What if your interest was compounded daily, you were paid monthly, and there were absolutely no fees? And what if you could have peace of mind because there was no attack on your principal if you ever needed your money back? Well, folks, there is an investment with all of these features. Investors all over the country are earning a high fixed rate of return with Rafah, and they don't care about what happened with the stock market or the Fed. And best of all, they receive their statement every month with no surprises. Would you like some more information? Just call 877-80-INVEST. That's 877-80-INVEST. Or log on to investyrefI.com. That's investyrefI.com. YrefI, do well by doing good.
My dad's name was David. He always talked about getting life insurance, and now it's too late.
No one was expecting my husband Dave to suffer from a heart attack. We didn't have life insurance. We thought we had more time.
Don't be Dave, and don't wait until it's too late to get the life insurance coverage you need. And if you don't have enough insurance to cover funeral costs, credit card debt, and other expenses, your family is going to get stuck with the bill. Call now to get affordable life insurance.
Just call
800-494-1562.
If you're over 50, you can't be turned down for this insurance, regardless of your health. Plus, there's no medical exam, no health questions. Your rate will never go up. Your coverage will never go down. And rates start as low as $5 a week. Remember, don't be Dave. Call now.
Call now.
800-494-1562. 2024 NTD 9th International Chinese Vocal Competition is scheduled to take place at Merkin Hall, Kaufman Music Center in New York from September 18th to 21st. The competition specially invites vocalists from the world-famous Shenyun Performing Arts to serve as judges. The prestigious Gold Award is $10,000. Chinese vocal artists aged 18 to 50 are welcome to register.
Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are today's top stories.
Former President Trump is expected to speak at a news conference this morning at Trump Tower, a day after the historic verdict following his 6-week New York trial.
With the guilty verdict in on former President Trump, we hear from New Yorkers on their reactions.
The U.S. and U.K. launch a major airstrike against Houthi terrorists in Yemen. Find out more about the operation as well as the latest in Israel's war against Hamas.
The U.S. and NATO are being threatened by Moscow over a history-making policy change. Find out what's changed and how Russia is responding.
The U.S. Secretary of Defense is meeting with his Chinese counterpart today. What he's expressing concern about and how China responds.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Reactions are pouring in following former President Trump's criminal conviction.
NTD's Daniel Monahan has the voices from the people in New York City.
Sheila Quinn is ecstatic about the ruling. She says no one is above the law.
But I'm very happy because I don't feel anyone's above the law. And I think that this person has been paramount in dismantling our democracy up until this point. So I'm happy about that verdict.
John Gardiner says he hopes people realize that the law should apply to everybody.
We'll find out when it comes to the sentencing stage if it does. He might get off easy, but he should be treated like everyone else.
Other New Yorkers reacted to the verdict.
It's a disgrace. Mr. Trump loves this city. He's a native New Yorker. He doesn't hate this city. He doesn't hate this country. The people that did this hate him.
I feel I'm not even worried about it because the truth always comes out, right? The truth's going to come out, so I'm not even worried about it. Even if Trump goes to jail, gets out, or gets bail or whatever, we're all going to vote for Trump still. It's not going to. How's it going to change my mind?
Oh my God! I almost fainted. It's disgusting. I'm telling you, man. I was just like, how could they do that? But the more money, the more power. You know how it is over here in America, man.
I'm so pleased that there's finally some accountability for Donald Trump.
I feel good. It's a great day for the American people, for everybody. I mean, you know, who is against who believe in the law. And I mean, you know, it's a great day. They see him, they see that no one is above the law.
I think it's a difficult decision to convict a former president.
Long Island resident Mary Jane DeSablis says she was speechless. She never thought Trump would be convicted.
I really didn't think he was ever going to get held to account for anything, and that the jury returned a guilty verdict. I'm stunned.
Trump has denied wrongdoing, and an attorney representing him said they would appeal as quickly as possible. It is unlikely such an appeal would be resolved by Election Day. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Trump's campaign is shattering fundraising records after the historic verdict in his New York criminal trial.
The campaign said they raised $34.8 million yesterday alone from small dollar donors, and that 30% of it came from first-time Trump donors.
Trump's campaign said their digital fundraising system was overwhelmed just minutes after the verdict, and that the amount raised yesterday was nearly double the previous single-day record on the platform.
The Trump campaign also released a new campaign message saying, "This is not a prosecution, this is persecution."
In his latest posts this morning, Trump said, quote, "I did nothing wrong, and frankly, there was nothing done wrong. NDAs are standard, commonly used, and legal. MAGA 2024 witch hunt. If this can happen to me, it can happen to anyone."
And continuing with the former president and his conviction, in Arizona, voters expressed a variety of reactions from shock and surprise to sadness and disbelief.
NTD's Daniel Monahan brings us more.
A Phoenix voter who only gave his name as Carl called the vote really sad.
It's a blow to the country. I mean, that's the way I look at it. There's no way you could honestly think this is for real. Any legitimacy to the charges.
Others shared their reactions as well.
Well, I can't say that I'm surprised. I was expecting it. So, actually.
To be honest, I'm shocked. Yeah, I was very surprised by that outcome. I did not think that was going to happen, unfortunately. Yeah, I would say sadness, disbelief. It's kind of unfortunate because he already does have a bad rap, and it's just going to make the haters a little bit more, against him, unfortunately.
Clinical director Allison Reed says she was not shocked. She expected Trump's conviction.
I do. I don't think he should be treated any differently than anybody else. This is the matter that is pretty cut and dry. If you do a certain thing, you go to jail. It doesn't matter who you are.
Food truck owner DeMarco Griggs says he never had a problem with Trump.
But to pay somebody to be quiet is similar to almost extortion. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think he did it.
No. I'm voting for Trump. Yeah. He will be my #1 ballot vote.
Justice Juan Merchan set sentencing for July 11th, just days before the Republican Party is scheduled to formally nominate Trump for president.
All right, breaking just now, the former president is speaking to the press following his guilty verdict.
Let's watch that.
What's happening where millions and millions of people are flowing in from all parts of the world, not just South America, from Africa, from Asia, from the Middle East. And they're coming in from jails and prisons, and they're coming in from mental institutions and insane asylums. They're coming in from all over the world into our country. And we have a president and a group of fascists that don't want to do anything about it, because they could right now, today, he could stop it. But he's not. They're destroying our country. Our country is in very bad shape, and they're very much against me saying these things. They want to raise your taxes by 4 times. They want to stop you from having cars with their ridiculous mandates that make it impossible for you to get a car or afford a car. But make it very possible for China to build all of our cars. It's a very serious problem that we have. We just went through one of many experiences where we had a conflicted judge, highly conflicted. There's never been a more conflicted judge. Now, I'm under a gag order, which nobody's ever been under. No presidential candidate's ever been under a gag order before. I'm under a gag order, nasty gag order, where I've had to pay thousands of dollars in penalties and fines and was threatened with jail. Think of it. I'm the leading candidate. I'm leading Biden by a lot, and I'm leading the Republicans to the point where that's over. So I'm the leading person for president, and I'm under a gag order by a man that can't put 2 sentences together, given by a court. And they are in total conjunction with the White House and the DOJ, just so you understand. This is all done by Biden and his people. Maybe his people more importantly. I don't know if Biden knows too much about it, because I don't know if he knows about anything. But he's nevertheless the president, so we have to use his name. And this is done by Washington, and nobody's ever seen anything like it. So we have a judge who's highly conflicted. You know what the confliction is. Nobody wants to write about it, and I'm not allowed to talk about it. If I do, he said, I get put in jail. So we'll play that game a little bit longer. We won't talk about it, but you're allowed to talk about it. I hope you do, because there's never been anybody so conflicted as this. As far as the trial itself, it was very unfair. We weren't allowed to use our election expert under any circumstances. You saw what happened to some of the witnesses that were on our side. They were literally crucified by this man who looks like an angel, but he's really a devil. He looks so nice and soft. People say, oh, he seems like such a nice man. No, unless you saw him in action. And you saw that with a certain witness that went through hell. And when we wanted to do things, he wouldn't let us do those things. But when the government wanted something, they got everything. They got everything they wanted. It was a rigged trial. We wanted a venue change where we could have a fair trial. We didn't get it. We wanted a judge change. We wanted a judge that wasn't conflicted. And obviously he didn't do that. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We had a DA who was a failed DA. Crime is rampant in New York, violent crime. That's what he's really supposed to be looking at. Crime is rampant in New York. Yesterday in McDonald's, you had a man hitting him up with machetes, a machete. Whoever can imagine even a machete being wielded in a store, in a place where they're eating, and he's going rampant. And Bragg is down watching a trial on what they call crimes. They're falsifying business records. That sounds so bad. To me, it sounds very bad. You know, it's only a misdemeanor, but to me, it sounds so bad. When they say falsifying business, that's a bad thing for me. I've never had that before. I'm falsifying. You know what falsifying business records is? In the first degree. They say falsifying business records. Sounds so good, right? It means that legal expense, I paid a lawyer, totally legal. I paid a lawyer a legal expense. And a bookkeeper, without any knowledge from me, correctly marked it down in the books. A very professional woman, highly respected, she testified. Marked it down in the books as a legal expense. So a legal expense, paid a lawyer, is a legal expense in the books. It's not sheetrock, construction, or any other thing. It's a legal expense. Think of that. This is what the falsification of business records were. And I said, what else are you going to call it? What else are you going to call it? Now, I would have testified. I wanted to testify. The theory is you never testify, because as soon as you testify, anybody, if it were George Washington, don't testify, because they'll get you on something that you said slightly wrong, and then they sue you for perjury. But I didn't care about that. I wanted to. But the judge allowed them to go into everything that I was ever involved in, not this case, everything that I was ever involved in, which is a first. In other words, you could go into every single thing that I ever did. Was he a bad boy here? Was he a bad boy there? And my lawyer said, what do you need to go through? And all you wanted to do is testify simply on this case. Because I would have loved to have testified. To this day, I would have liked to have testified. But you would have said something out of whack, like it was a beautiful sunny day and it was actually raining out. And I very much appreciate the big crowd of people outside. That's incredible what's happening. The level of support has been incredible. So the whole thing is legal expense was marked down as legal expense. Think of it. This is the crime that I committed, that I'm supposed to go to jail for 187 years for. When you have violent crime all over this city at levels that nobody's ever seen before, where you have businesses leaving, and businesses are leaving because of this, because heads of businesses say, man, we don't want to get involved with that. I could go through the books of any business person in this city, and I could find things that in theory, I guess, let's indict him, let's destroy his life. But I'm out there, and I don't mind being out there because I'm doing something for this country, and I'm doing something for our Constitution. It's very important, far beyond me. And this can't be allowed to happen to other presidents. It should never be allowed to happen in the future. But this is far beyond me. This is bigger than Trump. This is bigger than me. This is bigger than my presidency. And the people understand it because I just see a poll just came out, the Daily Mail. That was the first one, came out, was done last night right after the verdict, where I'm up 6 points. 6 points from what we already were. We were leading fairly substantially. We're up 6 points in the Daily Mail poll. Now, maybe other polls come out and it says something differently, but a lot of people have predicted it because the public understands, and they understand what's going on. This is a scam. There's a rigged trial. It shouldn't have been in that venue. We shouldn't have had that judge. He should have allowed us to have an election expert. We had the best expert, most respected expert, head of the Federal Elections Commission. He was all set to testify. He was waiting for 2 days. And when it was his turn, Bragg's people protested. And the judge knocked him out, said, you can't testify. He actually said you can't testify for anything having to do with the trial. You can say what the federal elections is. Well, that doesn't help. Everybody knows that. But you can't testify. So essentially, he wasn't able to testify. Other people weren't able to testify. But with these people, they were able to use people salacious. By the way, and nothing ever happened. There was no anything. Nothing ever happened, and they know it. But they were as salacious as they could be, and it had nothing to do with the case, but it had to do with politics. And do you notice the timing? The timing was perfect. This case was dead. It was dropped by every agency, every governmental board. It was dropped by the highly respected Southern District. They said, no, there's no case here. It was dropped by federal election, and that's what it's about. This is about a federal election, not a state election. You're not even allowed to look at it. They took the state and the city, and they went into a federal election. They're not allowed. The people from federal election, Southern District, and Washington dropped the case. Everybody dropped the case. There was no case. Cy Vance dropped the case. And when Bragg came in, he said, this is the most ridiculous case I've ever seen. And who would have a certain person, again, gag order, who would have a certain person like this ever testify? He said, this is essentially one of the worst people I've ever seen ever to testify. He said, the craziest case I've ever seen. This is Bragg. Then when I announced I was running for president, a long time later, they decided to revive this case. And they got a judge, Judge Manchin, who was responsible for another case that was also brought. It destroyed the life of a very good man, by the way. Destroyed the life of a very good man who went to prison once, and then they just put him in prison again because they said he lied. He didn't lie. I looked at the statements he made. In fact, he didn't remember something, and they put him in jail. Again, they've destroyed him. With me for many years, he was an honorable person. He was an honest man. And if you look at what he did, supposedly, it never happened. There's never been anything like this. Over the education of his grandchildren. Over, he didn't report that he had a car or 2 cars on his income. I don't know. I wonder how many people here have cars. I wonder how many people said, oh, gee, I have a car that's worth X dollars. How do you even figure it? And I guess you do have to report it, but I would say probably almost nobody does. Nobody even thinks about it. They put this man, they destroyed this man, but they put him in jail again because they didn't want him to testify. They didn't want him to testify. That's why he went to jail. They put him in jail twice. He's 77 years old. Now, normally I'd say that's an old guy, but I don't feel 77. Nobody ever says that about me. I'd like them to say, gee, we have to have a little sorrow for this man. Because they just don't say that about me, but maybe I'm better off that way. I think I'm probably better off that way. But they put him in jail twice. And you have to see what they put him in jail. And he was threatened by the judge. This man was told, you're going to get 15 years in jail if you don't give up Trump. And he was told that. You're going to get 15 years in jail. And he made a plea deal because he didn't want to spend the rest of his life, and he was told that viciously. We're living in a fascist state. He was told that viciously. So you can go to jail for 4 months, 5 months, or you can get 15 years in jail. So do a plea. almost who wouldn't do that plea? Everyone does those pleas. It's a horrible thing. There's a whole group of lawyers that fight that. It's so unfair. It's so unfair. But they destroyed his life. So many other things. You look at Southern District didn't want to bring the case. Nobody wanted to bring the case. And then you know who didn't want to bring the case most of all? Is Bragg. Bragg didn't want to bring it. But then he brought it. And they tried to make it a different case. They didn't say legal expense equal legal expense. Again, if I wrote down and paid a lawyer, and by the way, this was a highly qualified lawyer. Now, I'm not allowed to use his name because of the gag order. But, you know, he's a sleazebag. Everybody knows that. Took me a while to find out. But he was effective. He did work. But he wasn't a fixer. He was a lawyer. You know, they like to use the word fixer. He wasn't a fixer. He was a lawyer. At the time, he was a fully accredited lawyer. Now, he got into trouble not because of me. He got into trouble because he made outside deals, and he had something to do with taxi cabs and medallions, and he borrowed money. And that's why he went. And then he pled to three election violations. And as soon as I saw that, I said, I wonder why he did that. He pled. He took a deal. Now, he took a deal because he wanted to get off. In other words, I'll take a plea deal and I want to get off. And he wanted to make a deal with the Southern District. And they wrote the worst report I think I've ever seen on any human being, other than the report that was written on James Comey by the Inspector General, a very great Inspector General, actually, wrote a report that was so bad. This one was possibly worse. The Southern District, the judge didn't let us use it. He said, it's hearsay. I said, it's not hearsay. Wouldn't let us use it. This is about the man. But he got in trouble for a very simple reason, because he was involved with borrowing a lot of money, and he did something with the banks. I don't know if it's defrauded the banks, but something happened. You guys know what it is. And then in addition to that, he gave up on three things where he wasn't guilty. In fact, they were going to testify in that. The head of the FEC, the Brad Smith, the election expert, #1 rated in the country, was going to testify. He took a plea on three things. He just added them in because that gave him more bargaining power with respect to me. But the three things that he pled on, having to do with the election and having to do essentially a little bit with me, they weren't crimes. They weren't crimes. Nor is paying money under an NDA. So we have an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. It's a big deal, a non-disclosure agreement. Totally honorable, totally good, totally accepted. Everybody has them. Every company has non-disclosure agreements. But the press called it slush fund and all sorts of other things. Hush money, hush money. It's not hush money. It's called a non-disclosure agreement. And most of the people in this room have a non-disclosure agreement with their company. It's a disgrace. So it's not hush money. It's a non-disclosure agreement, totally legal, totally common. Everyone has it. And what happened is he signed a non-disclosure agreement with this person, I guess other people, but it's totally honest. You're allowed to make the payment. You don't have to make it. You can make it any way you want. It's a non-disclosure agreement. And he signed that. And there was nothing wrong with signing it. And this should have been a non-case. And everybody said it was a non-case, including Bragg. Bragg said, until I ran for office. And then they saw the polls. I was leading the Republicans. I was leading the Democrats. I was leading everybody. And all of a sudden, they brought it back. It's a very sad thing that's happening in our country. And it's a thing that I'm honored. In a way, I'm honored. It's not that it's pleasant. It's very bad for family. It's very bad for friends and businesses. But I'm honored to be involved in it because somebody has to do it. And I might as well keep going and be the one. But I'm very honored to be involved because we're fighting for our Constitution. The money that was paid legally. There was nothing illegal. In fact, the lawyer in creating the NDA, because at that time he was a fully accredited lawyer. He wasn't a fixer. I never thought of him as a fixer. the media called him a fixer or the prosecutors called him a fixer. He was a lawyer, and he was fairly good. Later on, I didn't like what he did. I didn't like, for instance, I didn't like that when I became president, he went around and made deals with companies. When I heard that, he was gone. He was gone. And he had payments coming to him, and a lot of this involved things that are very simple. There was nothing wrong. This was standard stuff, all standard stuff. Everything involved was standard. There was no crime here. In fact, I just watched a couple of the reports. You watched Jonathan Turley, Andy McCarthy, Greg Jarrett. You look at all of these people, Mark Levin, all very talented people, great people, many more. And they don't know me, essentially. They don't know me. They're legal scholars and experts. But I look at them. I watched Turley this morning saying, there's no crime here. Everybody says there's no crime here, except for this DA that's got the city out of control with crime. It's absolutely out of control. So we have an NDA that was signed. We have legal expenses. And here's the thing on legal expenses. You have 100 where they say, they do a charge. I just recorded this out. Falsification of business records in the first degree. It sounds so bad. I said, wow. And even my own lawyers, I get very upset with them because they don't say what it is. They say, well, falsification of legal records is only a felony. Well, that's a lot. Is only they say a misdemeanor. But they try and bring it up to a felony if there's 2 crimes. They have all these different things. The other thing is they missed the statute of limitations by a lot because this was very old. They could have brought this 7 years ago instead of bringing it right in the middle of the election. So they missed the statute of limitations. They did everything. Now, let me give you the good news. The good news is last night, we just got a report this morning, in the history of politics, I believe, maybe I'm wrong, somebody will find that I'm wrong, maybe, but I don't think so. They raised with small money donors, meaning like $21, $42, $53, $38, a record $39 million in about a 10-hour period. No, think of that. I like those people. Because so far, I guess it's backfiring. Now, I don't know. I'd rather not have it happen. I don't want to have it backfiring. I don't want to win this thing legitimately, not because they were stupid and did things that they shouldn't be doing. They shouldn't have brought this case. They were saying it this morning. This is a case that should not have been brought. I watched Andy McCarthy say this is a case that should not have been brought. And that was this morning. But they all say that. Every legal scholar has said it. And these are great people. They really understand the law. The other thing, a poll just came out. The first poll, I don't know, maybe others will be bad. But a poll just came out a little while ago. The Daily Mail. Does anybody read the Daily Mail? It's very good. They have a good poll. At least I like it today. And the Daily Mail just came out with a poll, and it has Trump up 6 points in the last 12 hours. 6 points. 6 points since this happened. Who thought this could happen? Because the people of our country know it's a hoax. They know it's a hoax. They get it. You know, they're really smart, and it's really something. So we're going to be appealing this scam. We're going to be appealing it on many different things. He wouldn't allow us to have witnesses. He wouldn't allow us to talk. He wouldn't allow us to do anything. The judge was a tyrant. And you got to see that with Bob Costello, a fine man. I've never seen anything like it, and neither has anybody that was in that courthouse where he demanded that the courthouse be cleared. Now, the good news is most of the people in the courthouse were the media. And anybody that was in the media, if you're fair, you'll say, wow, that was anger. That was crazed. He was crazed. And the reason that Bob Costello acted a little bit upset which I think he has a right to, was that every question he was being asked was being objected to by the other side and sustained by the judge. Sustained. I think he did it many times. I don't know what the number, many times. Even I was sitting there saying, and these were basic questions. And I never saw anybody treated that way by a judge. And I've been treated very badly by 2 other judges also, because it's all the same thing. And it all comes out of the White House. Crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country. He's the worst president in the history of our country. The most incompetent. He's the dumbest president we've ever had. He's the dumbest president, most incompetent president, and he's the most dishonest president we've ever had. And so many of he's a Manchurian candidate. You take a look at the way he treats China, Russia, so many others. You know, I ended the Russian pipeline. It was dead. He comes in and he approves it. And he gets $3.5 million, meaning $3.5 million is paid to the family, his family, from the mayor of Moscow's wife. And I said, where did that come from? Nobody wants to talk about it. But he's a very big danger to our country. And the only way they think they can win this election is by doing exactly what they're doing right now, win it in the courts because they can't win it at the ballot box. So we're going to show them that, we're going to fight. It's actually, I don't know, it's something where I'm wired in such a way that a lot of people would have gone away a long time ago. They would have gone away after impeachment hoax number 1. That was a total hoax. I had great support from the Republican Party, though. Then you had impeachment hoax number 2. And then they formed the committee. How about they formed the committee of thugs, the J6 committee of thugs. And they took their records and they destroyed all of the records after the committee was abandoned because those records were great for us. Now, can you imagine if Republicans did that? Everybody would have been in jail by now. Think of it, the unselect, I call it the unselect, they call it select committee, I call it the unselect committee of thugs. They meet, it's 100% Democrat and 2 past Republicans that are no longer Republicans, that are no longer in business anymore, thank you. But it was all Democrats and 2 wayward Republicans. Liz Cheney and crying Adam Kinzinger. He cries every time he goes on television. He's the most emotional human being I think I've ever seen. And that was our representatives. These 2 people were our rep. So they had all this stuff that they're leaking. And then when it came time to look at the records, like where the police said and the Capitol Guard said that I supplied, think of it, that I recommended as many soldiers or National Guard as you want. 10,000. If you had 500, you wouldn't have had a problem. There wouldn't have been a J6. But Nancy Pelosi and the group didn't want it. Anyway, so they have testimony to all of that I did not attack the Secret Service agent in the front of a car. You know, these are strong people. And I supposedly went to the driver, and I grabbed him around the neck. And he rebuffed me. And then I went to the other guy, who I think is a black belt in karate. And he's slightly younger than me. Maybe 35 years, 40 years, 50 years. And I grabbed him around the neck and said, he's a black belt in karate. They know how to get somebody from around their neck. They would have gone like this, and that would be the end of that. Actually, I had a friend that said, you shouldn't dispute that. That makes you look like the toughest cookie we've ever seen. You should have let that go on. But the fact is, it never happened. It was all made up. And that was proven to be made up. It proved to be a false story. And they deleted and destroyed all of that information, every ounce of it. We're dealing with a corrupt government. We have a corrupt country. Our elections are corrupt. Our borders are open. Our borders are going to be closed very soon. November 5th is going to be the most important day in the history of our country. Now, when I say that, because my people are always saying, do this, because we're fighting for America, DonaldJTrump.com. I hope everybody watching right now, DonaldJTrump.com, because it really makes a difference. They have a lot of money on the other side. I don't know where they get it. Nobody knows where they get it. But for some reason, they get money. But they're not on the side of our country. In many ways, I think they hate our country. Who on earth can want open borders where people are allowed to pour in from countries unknown, from places unknown, from languages that we haven't even heard of? We have people sitting in schools with languages where very few people have ever even heard of these languages. It's not like Spanish or French or Russian. Languages unknown. We have people coming from corners of the globe, and many of them are not good people. Many terrorists, record levels of terrorism, record levels of terrorists have come into our country. Record. They've never seen anything like it. You know, there was a report that in 2019, I don't believe this, by the way, the media gave it, and it was good for me, believe it or not. They said in 2019, there were no terrorists recorded that came into our country. I don't believe that. I don't think that's possible. But 2019 was a Trump year. I don't believe that that could be possible. But they said no terrorists came into our country. So let's say it was close. Let's say it was close. But now record levels of terrorists, record levels, the highest level we've ever seen of terrorists are pouring into our country. You have China with just in the last few months, 29,000 people came in, and I looked at them on a line, and they look like perfect soldiers. They're almost all male, from 19 to 25. It looks like a recruiting exercise. They have beautiful tents. They have propane stoves. They have cell phones, the best you can buy. I said, what's going on? It looks like they're building an army right in our country. Now, I don't think that would happen, right? We're losing our country. And I really think that this is an event, what took place yesterday with this judge. Look, we have conflicted, but he's a crooked judge, and you'll understand that. And I say that knowing that it's very dangerous for me to say that, and I don't mind, because I'm willing to do whatever I have to do to save our country and to save our Constitution. I don't mind. So thank you. So we will continue the fight. We're going to make America great again. Very simple. When people fight MAGA, they say, we're going to fight. I watch Biden. We're going to fight MAGA. We're going to stop MAGA. It's make America great again. That's all it is. MAGA. Make America great again. Our country's in serious trouble. We owe $36 trillion. We were energy independent for the first time ever, and now we're begging Venezuela for oil. One statistic you have to hear. Venezuela was crime-ridden. Caracas, the cities, crime-ridden. 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They just reported a 72% drop in crime in the last year because all of their criminals, most of them, and the rest are coming in now, the ones that didn't come in. In Venezuela, their prisons have been emptied into the United States. Their criminals and drug dealers have been taken out of the cities and brought into the United States. And that's true with many other countries. The Congo has just released a lot of people from jail. Congo, Africa, just released a lot of people from their prisons and jails and brought them into the United States of America. This is what's happening to our country. And it's not sustainable by anyone. Little things like our kids can't have a Little League game anymore because you have tents and you have migrants living on the fields. That's the least of it. People are taking over our luxury hotels, migrants, and yet our veterans, our great veterans, are living on the streets like dogs. They're living on the streets. But migrants are living in luxury hotels in cities all over our country run by Democrats. So it's my honor to be doing this. It really is. It's a very unpleasant thing, to be honest. But it's a great, great honor. We're going to do what I have to do. I'm going to do it. And the support has been, that's why I mentioned the number of $39 million. That's why I mentioned we're up 6 points. And we went up a lot over the last month because everybody saw it was a rigged deal. It was a rigged trial. But we're going to make America great again. We're going to make it better than ever before. November 5th, remember, November 5th is the most important day in the history of our country. Thank you very much, everybody.
Former President Trump there speaking following his guilty verdict in the New York business records trial. Breaking news also on the fallout of that verdict. House Republicans are asking Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg and Prosecutor Matthew Colangelo to testify before Congress.
The hearing is set on June 13th with the House Select Committee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. They also plan to ask former FEC Commissioner Brad Smith to appear.
For insight into this case, we have Paul Kamenar joining us now. He's a lead counsel and at the National Legal and Policy Center. Welcome, Paul. Good to have you here with us. Listening to former President Trump's speech there, he pointed out a lot of areas that he saw as holes in this case. What's your take on the strength of potential appeals here?
Well, this prosecution was a travesty of justice. There are at least a dozen arguments and issues that can be argued on appeal, and I think will prevail. For example, I mean, the judge should not have been on the case to begin with. He contributed money to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and to a Stop the Republicans PAC, and he was reprimanded by the New York Ethics Board. And they just said, hey, don't do this again. My goodness. I mean, that judge should have been thrown off the case from the very beginning. And then you had the unfair rulings during the trial. And one that Donald Trump mentioned was that the FEC expert, Bradley Smith, was not allowed to testify, or at least he could testify, but only to give some basic information about the law and not apply it to this case. And the jury instructions, 53 pages, were totally confusing. And what the jury had to do was not only find that there was falsification of business records, but hook that up with one of three other crimes. Take your pick, the judge said to the jury. And that's the only reason he can be found guilty of the felonies. Now, the three violations, which we don't know which one they picked, was violating New York and federal tax laws. Did they pick that one? Violating federal election campaign laws? Maybe they picked that one. Or violating New York other business record laws. So we don't know. And under our law, you're supposed to have a unanimous verdict. So that is a big issue on appeal.
So is there any
when
precedent?
I read the jury... Go ahead.
Is there any precedent for not having a unanimous underlying crime? And will it impact the approach of the appeal?
The Supreme Court has ruled that you have to have a unanimous verdict on each issue and element of the charge, and this certainly was one of the elements. Now, it may be that under New York law, they said, oh, that's okay, that's good enough for New York justice, but that's not going to pass, I think, constitutional muster before the Supreme Court. But in any event, let's assume, as Bragg said at his press conference afterwards, that these falsification of business records was done to influence the campaign. So maybe they're saying, well, it's a campaign violation. But you read the jury instructions, and there's just a little paragraph about what the Federal Election Campaign Act says. And it says that you cannot give more than $2,700 to a candidate. So if you're a jury, you go, oh, let's see. The reimbursement to Michael Cohen was $130,000, and that's certainly more than $2,700. There's the campaign violation. But what Brad Smith would testify to, what the law says, is that a candidate can spend unlimited amounts of money on his own campaign, whether he's buying computers for the campaign, whether he's hiring staff, whether he's buying new suits so it looks good, or whether he's paying a non-disclosure agreement so he won't look bad. And so there's no campaign violation from the beginning, but we're not sure that that's what the jury hung their hat on. And there's other issues involved too. You know, the venue change, so I think this will be reversed on appeal.
Yeah.
When it comes to that.
Okay, and in terms of the time in between the final verdict on appeal and now, some people are saying that they expect that the president may actually end up going to jail. What's your assessment there?
Yeah, no, that won't happen. I mean, he's going to be sentenced, I believe, on July 11th, and the judge could sentence him to prison. I don't think he will because this is a first offender. It's a nonviolent crime. But he may say, well, you're not contrite enough. You haven't come in and said, oh, you're so sorry for this a crime you're convicted of. And he may hold that against him and impose a prison sentence or may impose home detention, etc. But keep in mind that that sentence will be held in abeyance until he finishes his appeals. So the judge will impose a sentence. Donald Trump's lawyers will say, Your Honor, please hold off on that until we finish the appeal. Now, the judge may say, no, I want to impose this sentence right now. Then they have to go to an appellate court and say, hey, look, put a timeout on this sentence until we finish the appeals to you. And if they say, no, he's going to prison or right away or home detention, then you can go to the Supreme Court and say, look, you've got to put at least a timeout on this until we get all these legal issues briefed. And those legal issues will take at least a year for it to be briefed and argued. So this will happen way after the election.
Okay, but with all this hanging over the president's head, now as a convicted felon, how much do you think that could play into the politics from here on out until the election?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, obviously, it appears that it could hurt his campaign. They took a poll a few hours after the election, and his base, of course, is still strong and growing. But the others, I think there was 17% said that this would affect their vote negatively, but then 15% said no, because of this, we're going to vote for him because we think he's being unfairly prosecuted. So it looks like it may be a wash. There's a margin of error of 4% on that. So it depends upon how this will be played out during the campaign by both candidates. And as we get closer to the election, we'll see whether this attempt to silence Donald Trump will backfire.
And of course, we just heard former President Trump earlier saying that this case and this verdict is not really about him. It's bigger than him. He spoke about the Constitution and maintaining, verisimilitude toward the Constitution. What's your take on that?
Well, absolutely, because there are a lot of constitutional issues involved here. It was clearly a political persecution. This case and none of the other three cases would have been brought if Donald Trump was not running for president. So it's basically an attempt to interfere with the election. And so there's a larger issue here of a two-tiered system of justice. And this is really a stain on our criminal justice system. And it's like we're a third world country, a banana republic, where the one office holder who holds office, Joe Biden, can go after and go after his leading opponent. And that we only see in the Soviet Union and other third world countries. So this is more of an important issue rather than just being a common criminal case.
And yet the former president hasn't been directly linked to this case or any of the other cases. So what do you say to people who really see that distinction there as the executive is removed factually from this?
Well, that's not true. I mean, one of the lead prosecutors on this very case was the number 3 person from the Department of Justice, who's under Merrick Garland, who's under Donald Trump. So you've got to believe that there was some communication going on just on that case. But there are also the 2 other federal cases with Jack Smith as a special counsel. He's under the direction of Merrick Garland, who takes orders actually from Joe Biden. And if it's not him directly, it's the people around him basically carrying out his wishes. So this is clearly a hit job by the Democrats trying to go after Donald Trump and get him out of the campaign for the presidency, or at least hurt his chances. But as Donald Trump said, the real verdict will come on November 5th.
And Paul, we just have about a minute left. What do you think people should be watching for next in this case?
Well, actually, there's going to be some procedural motions filed in the next couple of weeks. Those are motions, what they call a judgment of acquittal in spite of the jury verdict. Those are rarely granted. What you ask the judges, look, the evidence was so one-sided and doesn't show he was guilty of the federal crime that you should just erase the jury verdict. The judge is not going to handle that. But the next thing coming up is the July 11th hearing, and that's where the judge will have the power to impose a sentence. But in the meantime, there'll be what's called a pre-sentence report done, where they will recommend to the judge what the probation office thinks that the sentence should be. So the next thing is that. But the other thing should be watched is by the end of this month, Supreme Court's going to rule on the immunity issue. So be on the lookout for that, because that will basically throw out the Jack Smith case. And also watch out on June 21st. The judge in Florida is going to hear an argument whether Jack Smith is even constitutionally appointed because of his being picked by Mayor Garland and not appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate, as all U.S. attorneys are. That one, I think, is a sleeper of an argument, but watch out for that one, too, because both of those cases will have a big impact on what goes forward here.
For sure. Plenty of developments to keep our eyes on. Thank you so much. Paul Kamenar, lead counsel at the National Legal and Policy Center. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Tangazo hili linahusu njaa. Tarajia kuona watoto wakiwa na njaa katika maeneo haya. Mambo yalikuwa bora kwa miaka mingi. Tuliweza kupigana na njaa na watoto wachache walikufa. Lakini sasa mambo yamebadilika na kwa mabaya zaidi. Hii ni kwa sababu wakati huu ukame umeangamiza zaidi.
Через війни та конфлікти ми мусимо залишати наші домівки і всі наші речі. Ми навіть не маємо їжі. Тому нам потрібна ваша допомога.
Millions of children are fighting to survive due to inequality, conflict, poverty, and the climate crisis. Save the Children is working alongside communities to provide a better life for children. And there's a way you can help. Please call or go online to give just $10 a month, only 33 cents a day. We urgently need 1,000 new monthly donors in the next 30 days to help the children we support around the world. You can help provide food, medicine, care, and protection, plus so much more that a child needs, by calling right now and giving just $10 a month.
Ви можете допомогти голодуючим родинам вижити.
All we need are 1,000 monthly donors in the next 30 days. Please call or go online now with your monthly gift of just $10. Thanks to generous government grants, every dollar you give can have up to 10 times the impact. And when you call with your credit card, we will send you this Save the Children tote bag as a thank you for your support.
Toto kote duniani потребують вашої допомоги.
Your small monthly donation of just $10 could be the reason a child in crisis survives. Please call or go online to hungerstopsnow.org to help save lives today.
Freedom is not free, and neither is the truth. In order to bring you the facts, our reporters are out there on the front lines getting the true story. Some of them served 10 years of prison in China. We've been censored on social media. Our Hong Kong printing offices were set on fire, and we've been repeatedly attacked by the Chinese Communist Party. But no matter what, we believe that you deserve the truth, and so we continue to bring the truth to light. Head on over to getepic.com and try honest journalism that is based in truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
Fostering a pet for a friend or neighbor can keep families together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
Join us on NTD Good Morning because we want you to stay informed.
Kickstart your morning with the latest you missed overnight.
Right, and don't forget that inspiration.
Absolutely, so let's shine some light on the good news too.
Tune in every weekday morning to NTD News.
Welcome back. Former President Trump just gave a speech after his guilty verdict. We're joined live by NTD White House correspondent Iris Tao. Now, who is there?
Iris, what's the latest over there?
Good afternoon to both of you. So just now, former President Trump finished giving an about 30-minute remarks to all the reporters and some supporters in the back there right here at Trump Tower in Manhattan, New York. And meanwhile, although this is marked as a press conference, he did not take any questions from reporters, nor did he do it last night when he exited the courthouse. And this speech, meanwhile, sounded a lot like a common theme of speech that he would talk about outside the courthouse for the past few weeks when he exited the courthouse. And today, he did talk about a few main facts about the case, especially about this trial. He called it very unfair and vowing to appeal it, and also citing several things such as the judge, the venue, and the timing of this trial that he said was unfair. And now here's a clip of him talking about that. Watch.
If they can do this to me, they can do this to anyone. It was a rigged trial. We wanted a venue change where we could have a fair trial. We didn't get it. We wanted a judge change. We wanted a judge that wasn't conflicted. And obviously he didn't do that.
And he also continued to defend himself against some of the main allegations raised in this case by prosecutors, for example, about the claim that there was hush money paid. He said it's not hush money, it's purely a non-disclosure agreement. He also said there's no falsifying of business records, saying it's totally legal, it's marked as legal expenses, not as any other fees such as construction fees, something that he has repeated over and over again for the past few weeks. He also talked about the gag order that he is still currently under. The judge might lift it after the verdict is now out, but so far he is still being gagged. He called it a nasty gag order. And all this is as he today explained why he did not testify during his trial, although he had the option to. He said if he said anything that would be slightly wrong, then they could sue him for a perjury. He cited that as a reason why he chose not to testify on his own behalf in this trial. And also he talked about the overall feelings he has now after being convicted of these 34 counts of falsifying business records in this New York trial. He said it's a great honor, but also added that it's not a pleasant feeling, it's bad for family and friends, and adding that, though, that someone has to do it, has to fight for our country and our Constitution, and although that he would rather win this trial legitimately. So we have heard Trump saying like he has some mixed feelings about this verdict right now, but the overall theme is that he's going to carry on and continue fighting against both his legal woes and also for his presidency coming up. And of course, and now he also announced some things about his campaign news. He said that over the past 10 hours after the verdict came out, he said there's a record $39 million total of donations on his website from small dollar donors. And that he said is a record-breaking amount right there. And he also cited a new poll by the Daily Mail showing him leading President Biden right now by 6 points. Of course, he also directed a large portion of the speech to attacking his political opponent, President Biden, calling him the worst president ever. Also going on to talk about issues such as the border, crime, especially in New York right now, as well as Biden's China policies when it comes to EVs. So that sounded a lot like a common campaign speech where he would go on to not only talk about his legal woes, but also common themes in the 2024 elections and issues that voters in this election would care about. He also said that November 5th would be the biggest day for this country where the people will deliver the real verdict. And that's something he also said yesterday when he exited the courthouse. Meanwhile, Biden's campaign has also apparently been responding to the latest verdict. Biden's campaign is also fundraising off of this development, saying that the danger posed by Trump to our democracy has never been greater. Also adding and telling voters that the only way to stop Trump from returning to the Oval Office will be at the ballot box. So right now, a big thing to watch for will be how the strategies by both campaigns will need to change after this verdict comes out. Would there be a smaller gap in fundraising by the Trump campaign now the verdict has come out and more of the supporters are motivated, or will the Biden campaign continue to hammer on Trump's legal woes and get more support on that front? So a lot more to watch for in the coming days and weeks. Back to you.
Iris Tao at Trump Tower in New York, thank you very much. And before we head to break, if you have any feedback, please email us at news.today@ntd.com.
And stay with us. We'll have more stories in just a moment. Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are today's top stories.
Former President Trump holds a press conference this morning following his historic verdict. Here his latest message to voters.
The Trump verdict has prompted reactions from lawmakers, the leaders of both parties, and members are weighing in. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has the latest from the Capitol.
NATO foreign ministers meet in the Czech Republic to prepare for the upcoming Leader Summit. The implications for the Russia-Ukraine war.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin meets with his Chinese counterpart in Singapore. The two are attending Asia's premier security forum.
In the NBA, the finals are set as Dallas will face Boston, looking to pull the upset. NTD's Dave Martin joins us to discuss the games.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Former President Trump is promising to appeal the verdict in his New York criminal trial.
Here's part of his speech just moments ago at Trump Tower.
As far as the trial itself, it was very unfair. We weren't allowed to use our election expert under any circumstances. You saw what happened to some of the witnesses that were on our side. They were literally crucified by this man who looks like an angel, but he's really a devil. The public understands, and they understand what's going on. This is a scam. There's a rigged trial. It shouldn't have been in that venue. We shouldn't have had that judge.
Trump's 3 other criminal cases remain unfinished. Here's a look at where they are now. 2 federal cases are ongoing in Florida and Washington, D.C., and 1 case is ongoing in Georgia. The federal cases were brought by Justice Department Special Counsel Jack Smith. The case in Florida is dealing with 40 counts against Trump stemming from alleged mishandling of sensitive government documents. 2 others were also charged. The trial has been indefinitely postponed by the judge. The Washington, D.C. case is related to the transfer of presidential power to Joe Biden after the 2020 election. Trump appealed to the Supreme Court after judges ruled presidential immunity does not apply in that case. The High Court's decision in the coming weeks will determine how and if the case can proceed. The Georgia case was brought by embattled District Attorney Fani Willis. Trump and 18 associates are charged in an alleged scheme to overturn Georgia results related to the 2020 presidential election. 4 co-defendants reached plea deals, and the case was slowed by proceedings over an improper romantic relationship between the members of the prosecution. No trial date has been set there.
And more on the coverage of former President Trump's criminal conviction. NTD's Daniel Monahan has reactions from people in New York City.
Sheila Quinn is ecstatic about the ruling. She says no one is above the law.
But I'm very happy because I don't feel anyone's above the law. And I think that this person has been paramount in dismantling our democracy up until this point. So I'm happy about that verdict.
John Gardiner says he hopes people realize that the law should apply to everybody.
We'll find out when it comes to the sentencing stage if it does. He might get off easy, but he should be treated like everyone else.
Other New Yorkers reacted to the verdict.
It's a disgrace. Mr. Trump loves this city. He's a native New Yorker. He doesn't hate this city. He doesn't hate this country. The people that did this hate him.
I feel I'm not even worried about it because the truth always comes out, right? The truth's going to come out, so I'm not even worried about it. Even if Trump goes to jail, gets out, or gets bail, or whatever, we're all going to vote for Trump still. It's not going to. How's it going to change my mind?
Oh my God, I almost fainted. It's disgusting, I'm telling you, man. I was just like, how could they do that? But the more money, the more power. You know how it is over here in America, man.
I'm so pleased that there's finally some accountability for Donald Trump.
I feel good. It's a great day for the American people, for everybody. I mean, you know, who is against who believe in the law. And I mean, you know, it's a great day. They see him, they see that no one is above the law.
I think it's a difficult decision to convict a former president.
Long Island resident Mary Jane DeSablis says she was speechless. She never thought Trump would be convicted.
I really didn't think he was ever going to get held to account for anything, and that the jury returned a guilty verdict. I'm stunned.
Trump has denied wrongdoing, and an attorney representing him said they would appeal as quickly as possible. It is unlikely such an appeal would be resolved by Election Day. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And over in D.C., tourists from across the country are reacting as well. Here's what people visiting the White House have to say.
I kind of worry that it'll further divide our country. It sounds like the jury really paid attention, and I think we need to honor the verdict.
It'll be overturned. It won't stand up in court on appeal.
One tourist from New York says she thinks the verdict means Trump won't be able to continue his campaign.
And then we're stuck with Biden and Kamala Harris that doesn't do anything for us and has not been doing anything for us since he became president.
One man says he didn't actually know what the case was all about, but he responded this once he learned more.
Falsifying documents. That seems like a very politician thing to do. It seems like that's probably par for the course.
That's great. You know, if you do something wrong, then you should be able to follow through with it. But what happens after that, he probably still try to get away with something. So.
And lastly, one bystander voiced his support for Trump by rapping.
You know you're going back in office. Come on. Trump, come on, boy. You know you're going back in 1600 Penn Avenue. You know that.
And down in Florida, supporters of the former president gathered near his Mar-a-Lago home. They're showing support for Trump, saying he's still their candidate.
My first reaction was sadness for America, sadness for Trump. But at the end of the day, it's only going to increase his support like every other time they indicted him.
Same thing. It's very scary. Very scary. We're in a third world country right now. I don't even feel like we live in the United States. If it can happen to him, it can happen to any of us.
One supporter called it a fake trial. He compared it to the 2020 election, which he says was fake too, suggesting some people are trying to take down Trump and prevent him from becoming president again.
I was so disappointed. It was like the whole world came to an end. But we have confidence in our higher courts. When it gets into the Supreme Court, he's going to be released.
Another supporter says she's angry, but also happy in a way. She seems confident that the felony charges against Trump will actually help him in the election later this year.
You know what? My president's got street credit now. Now he's really got street credit. He's been convicted of 34 counts. And you know what? There's a lot of people out there in the streets that were convicted too. So now you can relate to President Trump.
And continuing with former President Trump's conviction, in Arizona, voters expressed a variety of reactions from shock and surprise to sadness and disbelief.
A Phoenix voter who only gave his name as Carl called the vote really sad.
It's a blow to the country. I mean, that's the way I look at it. There's no way you could honestly think this is for real. Any legitimacy to the charges.
Others shared their reactions as well.
Well, I can't say that I'm surprised. I was expecting it. So, actually.
To be honest, I'm shocked. Yeah, I was very surprised by that outcome. I did not think that was going to happen, unfortunately. Yeah, I would say sadness, disbelief. It's kind of unfortunate because he already does have a bad rap, and it's just going to make the haters a little bit more, against him, unfortunately.
Clinical Director Allison Reed says she was not shocked. She expected Trump's conviction.
I do. I don't think he should be treated any differently than anybody else. This is the matter that is pretty cut and dry. If you do a certain thing, you go to jail. It doesn't matter who you are.
Food truck owner DeMarco Griggs says he never had a problem with Trump.
But to pay somebody to be quiet is similar to almost extortion. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think he did it.
No. I'm voting for Trump. Yeah. He will be my #1 ballot vote.
Justice Juan Merchan set sentencing for July 11th, just days before the Republican Party is scheduled to formally nominate Trump for president.
Now over to Texas, where people in Fort Worth are reacting to the news. Some said the conviction is all a sham, while others said it might affect their vote in November.
Alan Child says the former president's conviction could affect his vote.
Just simply, I don't think we need a convict in office if that conviction sticks. Yes, sir.
Colton Coates of Midland, Texas, says he believes there was an impartial jury in the case.
When you have a lot of jury members and they all agree on the same thing, there has to be some sort of truthfulness to their verdict. The two major candidates we have are just, to me, probably some of the worst in American history.
Others shared their thoughts.
I think it speaks very poorly of America. I think we've forgotten what's important and what really matters these days and the issues that we need to be focused on and we need to be fighting for. And I think it's sad. I think it's really sad.
Taking him to court for a lot of the things that he's not even done that the Democrats have done. And they're trying to get him for it instead of going after the Democrats.
If the people in the country don't see the judicial system as it is right now, don't think if they can do this to a president especially for what they've been going at the last 7 or 8 years on him, they need to wake up because they're next.
I think it's all a sham. I think they shouldn't be able to run election interference the way they are. I think, if you commit a crime, I think you need to be prosecuted for it. But there's been years coming before this, and it all pops up 6 months before an election. I don't think that's right.
The verdict plunges the United States into unexplored territory ahead of the November 5th presidential election.
And more on former President Trump's guilty verdict. We hear from those now on the West Coast in California for their take.
Sacramento resident Ravnor Gill says it's crazy to see a former president convicted of so many criminal charges.
But I'm going to keep it real. As a current presidential candidate and one of the ones actually winning majority support in all states, including Democratic states, as it shows statistically, I believe that still his support level from the people is not going to go down much.
Other Sacramento residents shared their thoughts.
I'm like, wow, something new, I guess. Hope you get what you got coming. That's all I got to say. First time for everything, right?
I think he's kind of getting what he deserved, honestly. So, yeah, hopefully we see what happens next with that situation.
I think it's insane. It's a bunch of wasted taxpayer money. That's what I think.
Karen Jamie from Alameda called Trump's conviction insane, saying she thought he was going to walk.
Well, I wouldn't have changed my vote voting in that direction, especially knowing that he's going to continue to remain on the ballot. I'm finding that is shocking, considering he's been convicted of 34 counts.
Others shared their reactions.
not fit for office, and this is just one of many things that he's up for conviction on. And so I hope this turns the tide and more people realize that he should not be allowed to be president again. I'm hoping now that our electoral system will also be the final arbiter about this and that he will not be reelected.
He's like the crookedest president this country has ever seen. And I'm just happy that the justice system works and that they convicted him on all charges.
Honestly, I don't agree with it at all. I think he should have been found not guilty. All the counts should have been dropped. I'm a huge Trump supporter, so I think he's done good with the country, and he's helped the Muslim community out a lot.
Trump denounced the trial as a disgrace, telling reporters he is an innocent man.
Coming up, the historic verdict against former President Trump has prompted reactions from lawmakers. NTD's Luis Martinez has more on what members of Congress are saying on Capitol Hill.
And internet funding from the government is running out for low-income households, but service providers are volunteering to cover the cost. We have that and more just after the break.
I had a pretty normal mom life. Everything was pretty good, and it was a very happy life.
And we just had a new baby. And then all of a sudden, within a day or two, she's on life support and fighting for her life.
And I knew something was pretty wrong. A little less than a week after I came home, I couldn't breathe. That's when we decided to go to the hospital. I was given the diagnosis that I had peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is basically a pregnancy-induced heart failure. They told me my only chance was a heart transplant.
And the American Heart Association helped make that possible. Their research helped save me.
This could not happen without monthly donations from friends like you. Your sustained support helps fund life-saving research that leads to medical breakthroughs, like those that gave Jen a second chance at life. Heart disease is the #1 killer in America, and we urgently need your help to save lives. Go to helpheart.org or call now to become a monthly donor today. Your donation of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, will make a difference through prevention, early detection, treatments, and cures that help save lives.
I am very thankful for the American Heart Association. I'm grateful for just every day that I get with my children.
Please go to helpheart.org or call now with your donation of just $19 a month. Join our community of monthly donors, and you'll get this limited edition t-shirt you could wear to show you're helping save lives.
One simple act today can save your life or the life of a loved one.
Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org. Become a monthly donor today, and your first month's gift will be matched.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
When they learn something new and you can just see in their faces, it's such an incredible moment. It's those moments that are my favorite.
Welcome back. Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia is leaving the Democratic Party. The longtime Democrat today announced he is registering as an independent.
Last year, Manchin made public that he would not seek re-election, giving Republicans a chance to secure the Senate seat.
His decision to register as an independent has raised questions about his political future and plans.
Manchin must file a statement of candidacy before August 1st and gather roughly 8,000 signatures to appear on the ballot if he decides to run for Senate or governor.
A Manchin spokesperson told CNN he will continue to caucus with Democrats in the Senate.
The historic verdict against former President Trump has prompted reactions from lawmakers from both sides of the aisle.
Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez joins us live from the Capitol with more details. Luis, what can you tell us about how Republican lawmakers are responding to Trump's criminal conviction?
Of course, good afternoon, Chris, Steph, and happy Friday. So if we start with House Republicans, we see varied responses, starting with House Freedom Caucus members like Congressman Byron Donalds, who immediately attacked the legal system and Democrats for fueling this according to Representative Byron Donalds, this political persecution of former President Donald Trump. Let's listen to Congressman Byron Donalds.
I think a lot of people are looking at this case and they see it for what it is. It is a sham. This was a railroad persecution of Donald Trump simply because Alvin Bragg and a lot of radical Democrats in our country wanted to get Donald Trump. They don't view this as justice, and neither do I.
So several House Freedom Caucus members used the word travesty to describe former President Donald Trump's trial in New York and conviction. But others, like Senator Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma, had a more softer criticism of the trial and actually focused on the political circumstances surrounding the jury, the judge, and, of course, the political environment leading to the elections of 2024. Let's listen to Senator Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma.
I do question the fact that could Trump actually get a fair trial there in New York when you're supposed to be, obviously your peers are supposed to be the ones that's judging you when you understand this is political moving forward. But the jury did their job. Look, this case is going to be appealed. It's going to be appealed. And most people will say that this is going to be overturned. And it will be eventually.
Because judges will.
Then we also have the leadership of House Republican leadership, both in the House of Representatives and the Senate. We have Speaker of the House Mike Johnson tweeting that the president will appeal this conviction verdict and will win. Then we also have a Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell tweeting that he expects the result of this trial to be overturned, a very confident expectation that the Senate Minority Leader is setting right there with his tweet. And then we also have very interesting, the House Judiciary Committee led by Chairman Jim Jordan announced that next week they will be seeking testimony from District Attorney of Manhattan Alvin Bragg. So we've seen, Chris, Steph, varied responses. We have House Freedom Caucus members who are showing their support for Donald Trump and criticizing the trial and conviction as political persecution. Others, like Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, taking a softer stance, and then House Republican leadership and Senate Republican leadership just expecting an appeal process to be won by former President Donald Trump. Back to you.
And Luis, what can you tell us about the response from Democratic leaders?
Of course, on the Democratic side, if we focus on the leadership, we can see that House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is asking political leaders across the country to respect the verdict. Then we have Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer saying that the verdict speaks for itself. And of course, other Democrats like House Representative Gary Connolly, who actually just tweeted, Donald Trump is a convicted felon. So again, varied responses, the leadership being more tame, asking for respect of the verdict, that the verdict speaks for itself, and then other members of House Democratic Conference just most likely using this conviction to further their re-election prospects in the elections coming in November 2024. You mentioned earlier Senator Joe Manchin that today registered as an independent. It might be a unrelated news story, but there's speculation that Trump's conviction might have pushed Senator Joe Manchin to pick today as a date to register as an independent. Chris, Steph, back to you.
Luis Martinez, thank you. More than a dozen internet service providers will continue to offer plans for $30 or less to low-income households. The White House says their voluntary commitment will help offset costs through the end of the year.
The Affordable Connectivity Program had subsidized internet access until today.
Major providers that will continue to offer discounted services include AT&T, Comcast, Optimum, Spectrum, and Verizon.
The Biden administration is asking Congress for $6 billion to extend funding for the program.
The White House claims the initiative has helped over 23 million households save between $30 and $75 a month.
And next up, Elon Musk has agreed to testify in an investigation into his $44 billion acquisition of Twitter. He won't appeal a court order to comply with the Securities and Exchange Commission's subpoena. The SEC filed a lawsuit in October 2023 after Musk refused to appear. He had already testified twice in July 2022. However, the SEC said that additional testimony was necessary due to a slew of new documents it received from various parties. The agency says that it had followed all appropriate administrative steps in seeking Musk's cooperation. However, his, quote, blatant refusal to comply required a court's intervention to compel him to testify. Musk has accused the SEC of harassment. And the Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts has declined to meet with lawmakers about two provocative flags hoisted at Justice Alito's properties. The meeting was requested by Democratic Senators Dick Durbin and Sheldon Whitehouse, who wanted to, quote, address the Supreme Court's ethics crisis. In his letter, Roberts cited the separation of powers concerns about preserving judicial independence for declining the request.
He also wrote that it would be inadvisable to meet with representatives of one party who have an interest in matters pending before the court. Roberts' letter comes one day after Alito wrote to lawmakers that he will not recuse himself in cases involving the January 6th breach on the U.S. Capitol.
Calls for Alito's recusal came after an upside-down American flag flew at his Virginia home in 2021. An Appeal to Heaven flag also flew at his New Jersey property last summer.
Alito said his wife put the flag up and that he had no part in it. He said he's confident that a reasonable person, not driven by political or ideological motives, would agree the events do not meet the standard for recusal.
And coming up, the U.S. and U.K. launch a major airstrike against Houthi terrorists in Yemen. Find out more about the operation, as well as the latest in Israel's war against Hamas.
And Ukraine and Russia exchanged prisoners for the first time since February. Details on the negotiations that freed 150 people. That and more when we return with NTD News.
The highest art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shin-Yun.
I was born into the wrong body, Mom. I was astounded by what they were teaching. Child Protective Services did show up at my house. Parents are fearful of losing custody of their children because they say the wrong thing. Risks?
No risks. We got everything covered, I assure you, Mrs. Connors.
They don't want anyone to know the truth.
I can't stay quiet about this anymore. It's destroyed my hope.
We're pushed into silence.
Hello. Today we are talking about Medicare Advantage plans, also known as Medicare Part C. If you have Original Medicare, you have Medicare Part A and Part B. Part A covers hospital stays, while Part B covers medical visits like seeing the doctor. A Medicare Part C plan covers everything in Parts A and B and could save you money or include additional benefits you may not be receiving with your current plan. If you're new to Medicare, moving or losing coverage for any reason, call now to see if you're eligible to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan that could include additional benefits. All you have to do to find out if you could enroll in a plan that could save you money or include additional benefits is follow these steps. 1. Call the number on your screen. 2. Give your zip code to the licensed insurance agent. And 3. Find a plan best for you and your needs. Part C plans can change every year. Call now, even if you've called in the past, because you could be eligible for 2024 plans with additional benefits that may have previously been unavailable to you. So call today and find out the plan options available to you in your zip code. Just call 800-693-6549. You do not automatically get enrolled in a Medicare Advantage plan that saves money or includes additional benefits, so you should call to find out what plans are available to you. Insurance companies offer different plans in different zip codes. Call today and find out what plans are available to you in your zip code. Call 800-693-6549. If you're new to Medicare, moving or losing coverage for any reason, call now to see if you're eligible to enroll in a Part C plan that could save you money and include additional benefits. All you have to do is follow these steps. 1. Call the number on your screen. 2. Give your zip code to the licensed insurance agent. And 3. Find a plan best for you and your needs. Remember, you do not automatically get a Part C plan. Call now for your free 2024 no-obligation Medicare benefits review. Call 800-693-6549. 800-693-6549. 800-693-6549.
Hi, I'm Kelly Wright. We thank you for joining us and watching America's Hope here on NTD News. Bottom line is, I know you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, but let's give you some good news in the midst of the bad news. Watch us nightly, right here on NTD News, for a full dose of America's Hope.
Welcome back. More updates coming in on the war between Israel and Hamas terrorists in Gaza. Israeli forces are expanding their operations in central Rafah.
The military said today that its troops in central Rafah uncovered Hamas rocket launchers and tunnels. Soldiers also dismantled a weapons storage site of the terrorist group.
The military also said it completed its mission in part of the city of Jabalia in northern Gaza. This came as the Israeli government told hostage families that it's not ready to sign a deal to bring back all hostages.
Meanwhile, the U.S. and U.K. carried out their latest airstrikes against the Houthi terrorists in Yemen. At least 16 were killed and 42 others were wounded, according to the Houthis.
That's the highest publicly acknowledged death toll from the multiple airstrikes on the terror group. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said the strikes were taken in self-defense.
And now for a shift in gears, we have some short headlines from Germany, the Czech Republic, and other European countries. The Kremlin says that former President Trump's conviction shows that all legal and illegal means are being used to eliminate political rivals. Trump is the first U.S. president to be convicted of a crime.
The conviction of the former president comes amid a volatile battlefield situation in Ukraine.
The Kremlin says that it's already aware of attempts by Ukraine to strike targets inside Russian territory with U.S.-supplied weapons. NATO foreign ministers met in the Czech Republic today to prepare for this summer's Leaders Summit. A major topic is removing the restrictions on how Kyiv can use Western-supplied weaponry to combat Russia.
President Biden has given Ukraine the go-ahead to use American weapons to strike inside Russia for the limited purpose of defending Kharkiv. Calls for more Ukrainian leeway have grown louder in recent weeks after Russia launched artillery strikes on Kharkiv from its own territory.
Now, numerous ministers, including those from the Netherlands, Finland, Poland, and Germany, are expressing similar approval.
They say Ukraine has the right to defend itself from attacks originating on Russian soil.
Italy's foreign minister says his government will not allow any weapons sent to Ukraine to attack targets in Russia. He argues that Italy is constitutionally prohibited from doing so.
The foreign minister said his country wants, quote, a just peace in the conflict. He added that Italy will continue to support Ukraine to defend its own territory at the NATO foreign ministers meeting in Prague.
Ukraine and Russia just completed their first prisoner of war exchange since February, freeing 150 people. The negotiations were mediated by the United Arab Emirates.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that 75 Ukrainian prisoners, including 4 civilians and the rest military personnel, are returning from Russia.
According to Russian news, Russia's defense ministry said Ukraine also handed over 75 people.
Ukrainian officials reported bringing back 19 defenders of Snake Island, a rocky outcrop in the Black Sea that became a symbol of Ukrainian defiance early in the war when Ukrainian guards refused to surrender to Russian forces.
Spain has fined budget airlines Ryanair, EasyJet, Vueling, and privately owned Volocity more than $160 million. The country's Consumer Rights Ministry penalized the carriers for charging for cabin luggage and other business practices.
The ministry also fined the airlines for making passengers pay to sit with their children. Some of the carriers have indicated that they will challenge the government's decision.
Airlines in the United States have come under similar pressure over what the Biden administration calls junk fees.
A new rule announced in April aims to protect consumers against such fees.
A volcano south of Iceland's capital is spewing lava for the third consecutive day. It's shooting glowing hot lava over 50 years into the air.
This eruption is the volcano's fifth since December and the most powerful one since it became active 3 years ago.
In the fishing town of Grindavik, several homes were destroyed by lava earlier this year. Now those few residents who had returned were forced to evacuate again.
A major tourist attraction nearby, the Blue Lagoon Outdoor Spa, also got the evacuation order. There were no reports of injuries following the eruption.
And next, the defense chiefs from the U.S. and China just had their first talk in 2 years. The meeting was held today at Asia's premier defense summit in Singapore. The meeting comes as tensions around Taiwan reach a historic high point.
U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin expressed concern about Chinese military activity near Taiwan, especially after the island's new leader was sworn in. The Pentagon said he told China to not use Taiwan's election as an excuse for coercion measures.
The Chinese defense head warned Austin that the U.S. should stay out of China's affairs with Taiwan. Beijing sees Taiwan as China's territory, despite never having ruled it. Australian politicians are weighing in on the Trump verdict. They say their relationship with the U.S. still remains strong regardless of who is elected as president this year. Here's Australia's foreign minister commenting on the issue.
The United States of America is our most important strategic partner. We have a relationship that goes back decades. We have an alliance which is enduring. We have a friendship and we have a very strong relationship across people and institutions, and that will continue.
Australia's Prime Minister said that the alliance between the two countries is a relationship between nations, not just between individuals. Neither the Prime Minister nor the Foreign Minister commented directly on the case. They say they won't comment on legal proceedings happening in other countries.
Australia's opposition leader said some Americans love Trump while others hate the former president. According to him, this case will further reinforce the views on both sides. Next, turning to Hong Kong, one of the region's most high-profile activist couples are currently separated. Lun Kwok Hung has been in jail for 3 years after taking part in pro-democracy protests. His wife, Chan Po Ying, explains how her values and life are evolving while she waits for her husband to come home.
In the past, we fought side by side in the social movement for a very long time. Since he's a person who cherishes freedom, suddenly living in a regimented and institutionalized environment where all individuality is completely suppressed, he hasn't adjusted well. However, one thing is that his will still persists. He always tells me that he never believes he is wrong, and he has no guilt to admit. He remains very steadfast in this belief.
Chan's husband is a former Hong Kong lawmaker. The 68-year-old was jailed in early 2021 in one of the harshest crackdowns on democracy activists.
Chan said she feels the most lonely when she needs her husband's advice and support, but finds him not around. The two were in the same pro-democracy group for many years. They married just before he was jailed, partly so she could visit him more often in prison.
Beijing imposed a national security law on Hong Kong in 2020. The law gives the Chinese regime greater power to tighten control.
Facing the current strict environment, Chan said she believes Hong Kongers should insist on basic civil rights, including the right to expression, freedom of speech, and the freedom of assembly.
And joining us now is NTD's Business Matters host, Don Ma, to give us the latest updates from the tech and business world.
Don, good to see you. What do you have for us today?
Good to see you both. Okay, I wanted to talk to you guys about Trump's media and its shares. So Trump Media Technology Group fell 5% in choppy trading today. So of course, this is after a jury found former President Donald Trump guilty of falsifying records ahead of the 2016 election. So the stock opened higher today and then was among the top trends on Reddit's discussion forum, Wall Street Bets, indicating that strong interest from individual traders on that. So the broader market showed little impact, actually, after the verdict in the case was widely regarded as the least consequential of the 4 criminal prosecutions that Trump faces. So neither a criminal conviction nor a prison sentence will affect Trump's eligibility to become president if he wins the November 5th election. We all know that. So Trump's net worth is tied to his stake in TMTG. He owned about 64.9% of the company as of April 26, which is worth around $5.7 billion. So TMTG's current valuation is approximately around $9.2 billion.
Oh, okay. Wow. So there's a lot to digest there. But let's turn now to inflation. What's the latest on that?
Yeah. So I think inflation today will actually be a bigger mover of the markets rather than Trump. So it is important to mention that. So this inflation gauge that we got today, closely tracked by the Federal Reserve, actually cooled slightly last month. So this is a potential sign that inflation may be easing after running high in the first 3 months of the year. Now we're talking about the personal consumption expenditures price index. It increased 0.3% last month, and this is according to the Commerce Department's Bureau of Economic Analysis earlier today. So the Fed tends to favor this inflation gauge over the better known Consumer Price Index, or CPI. So the PCE index, which is the index we're talking about today, tries to account for changes in how people shop when inflation jumps. It can capture, for example, when consumers switch from pricier national brands to cheaper store brands, as an example. And federal officials have said that they would need to see at least several mild inflation reports before they would be comfortable cutting their benchmark interest rates.
Okay, that's interesting, but it is important to remind everyone that, yeah, inflation kind of slowing doesn't mean that prices are coming down. It just means that they're going up more slowly, right?
Exactly. You could have, for example, I'm just thinking, if you have $7, for example, for a carton of eggs, for a dozen of eggs, and the next year you still have $7. Inflation is 0, but you're still paying $7 for a dozen of eggs, which is very expensive.
Exactly. All right, Don Ma, thank you very much.
Thank you.
One in 5 children worldwide are faced with the reality of living without food. No family dinners, no special treats, not enough energy to play. All around the world, hunger is affecting children's physical and mental health. Toddlers are suffering from acute malnutrition, which stunts their growth. Kids are forced to drop out of school so they can help support their families. Conflict, inflation, and climate have ignited the worst famine in our lifetime. And we are fed up. Fed up that hunger devours dreams. Fed up that hunger destroys joy. Fed up with the fact that hunger eats childhood. Help us feed the futures of children all over the world by visiting getfedupnow.org. For as little as $10 a month, you can join Save the Children as we support children and families in desperate need of our help. Now is the time to get fed up and give back. When you join the cause, your $10 monthly donation can help communities in need of life-saving treatments and nutrients, prevent children from dropping out of school, support our work with communities and governments to help children go from short-term surviving to long-term thriving. And now, thanks to special government grants, every dollar you give can multiply up to 10 times the impact. That means more food, water, medicine, and help for kids around the world. You'll also receive a free tote bag to share your support for children in need. Having your childhood eaten away by hunger is unimaginable. Get fed up. Call us now or visit getfedupnow.org
Hi, I'm Tim Che, the director and writer of The Firing Squad. You can participate in our Million Souls campaign, inviting everyone you know to Jesus. Listen, we all face some kind of firing squad in our lives, and yet faith in the Lord, that challenge can lead us to true peace in this insane world. We can't do it without you. We're competing with big Hollywood movies, so we're relying on your voice to spread the word. Thank you again for supporting this important movie.
Fostering a pet for a friend or neighbor can keep families together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
For the day's top headlines and the news you need to know, tune in right here to NTD Evening News.
And now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, great to see you. A lot going on. Dallas is going to the NBA Finals in a blowout win. How surprising was that?
Very surprising. I mean, once they went up 3-0, pretty much everyone knew they were going to at least advance because no one's come back from that deficit. But it was a margin of victory last night that was very unexpected. I mean, it was 21 points. I mean, it was pretty much over in the first quarter, really thanks to Luka Doncic. He scored 20 points in that quarter. The Mavs went on a 17 run to end it. They were up 29 points by halftime, and it was over at that point. I mean, it's all more surprising that the first 4 games were so close. I'm actually very shocked, though, that Minnesota was unable to mount much of a comeback. I mean, they were at home last night, too. In any case, Dallas will now meet in Boston in the NBA Finals. That's going to start next Thursday. Now, this is going to pit Kyrie Irving against his former Boston teammates, and it's going to pit Kristaps Porzingis against his former Dallas teammates. The Celtics, though, will be favored to win.
Okay, now, Dave, moving to women's golf news. LPGA star Nelly Korda, who's had a very dominant season thus far, is near the bottom after one round. That's in U.S. Women's Open. What happened in that first round?
You know, it was really one hole. This is the 12th. This is a par 3 hole, but it has a creek running beside it. And she hit it in the water 3 times, so she had to take 3 penalties on that. Scored a 10. Now that's a very rare septuple bogey. I mean, Steph, it was tough to watch. It was almost like me out there practically. So she finished with a 10 over 80 on the day. That put her in 148th place out of 156. Now today is critical for her because only the top 60 are going to will advance to the 3rd and 4th rounds this weekend. So she's going to have an incredible round 2 today just to get to Saturday and Sunday, let alone have a chance at winning. And as you mentioned, she's won a lot this year. 6 wins in 8 events. So it's going to take quite a comeback, though, to continue that.
And Dave, in the NHL playoffs, the Florida Panthers beat the New York Rangers last night to take the 3-2 series lead. What's been the storyline of this series so far?
Well, New York, they've struggled to score. They've got a great goalie in Igor Shesterkin. They've just struggled to score. They're only 1 of 14 on the power play. They've had some unsung heroes that have actually stepped up and scored. You know, Barclay Goodrow has 3 goals in this series. He had 4 in the entire regular season. Florida, though, they're a very well-rounded team. Their goalie, Sergei Bobrovsky, is very good himself. They're just one away now from making it back to the NHL Finals for the 2nd straight season. Now, tonight, we've got Game 5 in the West. Edmonton and Dallas are tied at 2 games apiece. So really 2 exciting series in these conference finals of the NHL, somewhat unlike the NBA playoffs.
All right. Well, Dave, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Dave. There are more ways to promote tooth decay than just eating sweets. On this episode of Strong Mind and Body, we'll learn about the other causes. Here's Gina Marie.
Eating too many sweets is not the only cause of tooth decay. People who frequently stay up late or have low saliva levels are also prone to cavities. Today we're going to look at 4 common causes of tooth decay and 4 foods that can help to prevent it. Let's look at number 1, acidic foods and beverages. Sweet treats, soda and fruit juice are highly acidic and disrupt the natural pH balance in the mouth. In this environment, dental plaque adheres to the teeth. This makes the teeth more susceptible to enamel erosion that contributes to tooth decay. Number 2, another one you'll want to avoid is fried and spicy foods. That's right, excessive intake can lead to swollen and inflamed gums, bad breath, dry mouth, and tooth decay. Number 3, unhealthy habits. These can include regularly staying up late, excessive work, high stress, and insomnia. These all weaken the body's immune system, and this can lead to a proliferation of bacteria in the mouth, and that can accumulate into teeth or gum issues. This results in swollen and inflamed gums or tooth decay. And number 4 is insufficient saliva production. Low saliva production can make the mouth acidic. This speeds up the loss of calcium and minerals from the teeth and potentially leads to tooth decay. Next, let's look at 4 foods that can prevent tooth decay. Number 1, onion. Onions help to lower cholesterol and prevent tooth decay. The sulfur compounds in onions exhibit potent antibacterial properties. Another one you want to consider, number 2, is cheese. Consuming cheese stimulates saliva production, which promotes the release of minerals. These minerals are vital for bone and tooth health. Number 3 is propolis. Propolis is a resin-like substance that bees produce to build their hives. It can kill the bacteria responsible for tooth decay and help to remove plaque. And finally, number 4, you'll want to have foods that are rich in natural fluoride. Foods rich in natural fluoride exhibit a preventative effect against tooth decay. Examples include fish, shrimp, seaweed, jellyfish, apples, lettuce, mineral water, and tea leaves. And finally, make sure you establish a good brushing routine and visit your dentist regularly for checkups. Of course, that's crucial.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
Yeah, so there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
What's happened to this world we're living in? Why?
For the 4 years he has been on this earth, he has known nothing but war.
Wherever I go, the things I see, I just want to turn away. The dreams I have, the stories I could tell, will they still be possible? This year, more than ever, I need a brand new world, a clean world. Where I can improve myself and be inspired. My stage can be anywhere and everywhere. But it begins here.
Ganjing World, a brighter way of life.
Hi, folks. Do you trust this economy? What if you could receive a strong fixed rate of return that's not correlated to the stock market or the Fed? And what if you were in control? You could turn your income on or off, compound it, whatever you choose. What if your interest was compounded daily, you were paid monthly, and there were absolutely no fees? And what if you could have peace of mind because there was no attack on your principal if you ever needed your money back? Well, folks, there is an investment with all of these features. Investors all over the country are earning a high fixed rate of return with Refi, and they don't care about what happens with the stock market or the Fed. And best of all, they receive their statement every month with no surprises. Would you like some more information? Just call 877-80-INVEST. That's 877-80-INVEST. Or log on to investyrefy.com. That's investyrefy.com. Refi, do well by doing good.
Say goodbye to harsh, bitter coffee and hello to a delicious, smooth brew. With specialty quality beans, expertly roasted in-house, you'll taste the difference with every sip. Fermented with a blend of 50 enzymes, Dave's Coffee delivers a rich brew like no other. Made with the highest grade specialty beans available, you're sure to taste the difference. Elevate your morning with Dave's enzyme fermented coffee.
I was born into the wrong body. I was astounded by what they were teaching. Child Protective Services did show up at my house. Parents are fearful of losing custody of their children because they say the wrong thing. Risks?
No risks. We got everything covered, I assure you, Mrs. Connors.
They don't want anyone to know the truth.
I can't stay quiet about this anymore. It's destroyed my health.
We're pushed into silence.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.